Hey guys, tonight we're diving into one of the grimiest, grittiest chapters of human hustle, the Victorian factory system. You're not just reading about it, you're living it. That's right. For the next few hours, you are the factory worker. Your hands are rough, your lungs are worse, and spoiler alert, you probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know what city you're watching from and what time it is. I want to know who's suffering through history with me. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. It's dark outside, and by dark I mean pitch black. The kind of black that swallows the moon and spits out fog. Your eyes creak open to the sound of coughing. Yours, your little brother's, your dad's. It's the family alarm clock, a symphony of hacking. There's barely any light filtering in through the soot-stained glass, and your tiny bedroom smells like wet socks, burnt coal, and a hint of despair. You lie on a mattress stuffed with straw that's gone flat in the middle. There's mould creeping up the walls, and a mouse that's decided your pillow is his now. And oh, look at that. Your boots are still wet from yesterday, sitting right where you left them, in a puddle of brown water near the door. Time to get dressed. You throw on the same clothes you've worn all week. Shirt stiff with grime, your trousers have holes in the knees, and your one pair of socks are more concept than reality at this point. You don't even question it, it's just life. You're 11, by the way. Or maybe 12. No one's really sure. Birthdays aren't a thing here. What matters is that you're old enough to work, and young enough to still fit into tight spaces. Downstairs, the air's thick with the smell of coal smoke and burnt toast, which is a luxury today. Usually it's just crust and dripping. Your mum's already up, hands raw from scrubbing someone else's laundry. She slides a crusty piece of bread into your hand and hands you a tin cup of lukewarm tea that tastes like metal and sadness. You sit at the wobbly wooden table with your siblings, none of whom are awake, really. They're just blinking slowly, chewing like zombies, mentally preparing for another 14-hour shift. The baby's crying, but no one picks her up. Not because you don't care, just because you've all got 5 minutes left before the walk begins. You step outside and bam, the cold hits you like a slap. Not a playful slap, a mean one, the kind your foreman gives when he catches you slouching. The streets are wet with yesterday's rain and lined with people just like you. Kids in threadbare clothes, women with their hair tied back, men coughing into blackened handkerchiefs. You're heading to the cotton mill, about a 20-minute walk. Some people live closer, some sleep inside the factory itself. You're lucky. Your family rents a single room in a tenement, and although the roof leaks and the neighbour screams in his sleep, at least it's not a workhouse. The walk is quiet. Everyone's just dragging their bodies forward, past the shops that aren't open yet, past the gin palaces where men passed out the night before, past the meat stalls with rats already waiting in line. And then you see it. The mill. It's always the first thing to glow in the morning. Steam pouring from the vents, yellow lamps flickering behind dirty windows. It looks like it's alive, breathing, wheezing, groaning. As you approach, you instinctively speed up. Being late means you lose a quarter of your wages. Too late, and they replace you. No warnings, no second chances. You're cheap and replaceable. That's the system. Now here's a fun historical fact. Some factory owners actually paid kids to act as human alarm clocks. No, really. They were called knocker-uppers. They'd tap on your window with a stick until you got out of bed. Some even used pea shooters. Imagine getting pelted in the eye with dried peas every morning. Charming. You slip through the main gate, dodging the older boys who love to trip you or slap your cap off your head. You don't react. Just keep your head down. Eye contact is risky this early. Inside, you sign in with chalk on a blackboard because punch cards aren't a thing yet. The overseer stands by the door with a pocket watch, scowling like it's his full-time job. The factory smells awful. Oil, damp wood, hot metal, and something sour that never goes away. You take your spot near the looms, which haven't started yet. There's a window cracked open above you, and you can see the sun starting to rise. It's going to be a long, long day. This is your life. 6 days a week, 14 hours a day, no vacations, no holidays unless the machinery breaks down, and even then you're probably cleaning it. Scholars still argue over whether factory life was better than agricultural labour. Some say factory wages, while horrific, were more stable. Others argue the physical toll was worse and the psychological grind more intense. One thing's certain, nobody is romanticising either one. You crack your knuckles, which are already swollen, and take a deep breath through your scarf. Not for warmth, it's just to filter out the dust a little. The machines start to rattle and roar to life, and like a switch, everyone around you goes from slumped bodies to snapping into motion. It's time. Your shift begins. You're in it now. You don't ease into work, you slam into it. The second the looms start their rhythmic clack, 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 your arms know exactly what to do. You've done this 100 times already, and your muscles respond before your brain fully wakes up. That's probably a good thing, honestly. Less time to think about how much this all sucks. You're stationed near the spinning frames, where long ropes of cotton thread dance across metal spools and wooden bobbins. You're what they call a piecer, which sounds whimsical until you realise it means you're constantly leaning in between moving parts to fix broken threads. If you're too slow, the machine stops. If the machine stops, you get yelled at. If you get yelled at, your pay gets docked, or worse, you get the belt, or a cane, or a solid, humiliating ear twist in front of everyone. It's barely been an hour and your back's already screaming. Your hands are black with grease and cotton fluff, and your fingertips feel raw from catching sharp strands. Still, you're faster than most. Probably from all those nights you practiced tying knots in the dark when you couldn't sleep. Your little sister's working 2 rows over. She's a scavenger. That job sounds cute too, like a little raccoon. But what it actually means is she crawls under moving machines to collect lint and debris. Yeah, under moving machines. Because shutting them off wastes time and money. You glance over just long enough to see her wriggle back out from under the frame, her cheeks grey with dust, holding a tiny tin bucket of fluff like it's treasure. One day she might lose a hand doing that. You don't say it out loud, but you both know it's just a matter of time. The noise is unbearable. It isn't just loud. It's a constant, jarring, mechanical scream that eats away at your ears. It never stops. Talking is impossible. You learn to lip read or give weird hand signals. You've also learned that the headaches don't go away, not even after you leave. Just an endless ringing in your ears like there's a steam whistle buried in your skull. And that, fun fact, is how early industrial deafness became a thing. Entire generations of factory workers had their hearing absolutely shredded by this unrelenting noise. Some doctors started calling it mill deafness. Of course, no one actually did anything about it for decades, because hey, plenty more ears where those came from. Around mid-morning, the overseer does his rounds. His name is Mr. Clench, which feels a little too on the nose. He walks like his spine is made of iron rods, and his neck can't turn left. He carries a stick, not for walking, for correcting. You don't meet his eyes. No one does. You just keep working, hands flying, sweat already beading on your upper lip, even though the place is freezing. The heat doesn't come from warmth. It comes from the machines, the friction, the labour, and even then, only in patches. Your fingertips are ice, but your shirt sticks to your back. Mr. Clench smacks a boy 2 rows over for leaning too close to the loom. The sound echoes. No one flinches. It's routine. Back to work. You're already hungry, but it's not time for a break. Your stomach tries to digest that crust of bread you had this morning, but it's burning through it like it was a ghost meal. Your mouth is dry. You're technically allowed to drink water, but it's warm and usually tastes like rust. A rat once drowned in one of the barrels last winter. No one cleaned it out for a week. You keep your eye on the thread. When one breaks, you dart forward and patch it like a little ghost surgeon. Fast, silent, invisible. You're proud of how quick you are. No one's told you that, of course, but you haven't been yelled at yet today, and that's a kind of praise, right? You notice something weird with one of the looms is vibrating funny. The belt above it is wobbling like a drunk worm. You consider saying something, but you remember what happened last time someone complained about a machine. They got pulled off the shift for causing disruption, lost a full day's pay. So you shut up. Just make a mental note not to stand too close. Scholars still debate how much agency workers really had back then. Were you just pawns in a giant industrial system? Or did small acts of rebellion, deliberate mistakes, slowdowns, hidden tools add up to resistance? You don't think about it like that. You're just trying to keep your fingers attached to your hands. You hear a scream, not the usual kind. This one's sharper. A girl's. Everyone stops for a fraction of a second, but the machines don't. They never stop. You can't see what happened at first, just a group of kids crowding around something near the big loom. Then you hear the murmurs. Someone's braid got caught in the gears. Her hair's gone, ripped straight from the scalp. She's on the floor now, shaking, eyes wide, blood everywhere. Her scalp looks like raw meat. Mr. Clench tells two older boys to carry her out. "Get her to the dispensary," he mutters. Then he turns to the rest of you. Back to work. No one argues. The machines roar on louder than ever. Later you find out her name was Anna. She was 13. She tied her hair back, but it came loose. They might let her come back next week if the bleeding stops. You'd think after something like that you'd get a break, maybe a few minutes to recover, but no. You just go back to piecing threads, trying not to imagine your scalp in a bucket. Around noon, the factory horn blares once. Lunchtime. You line up to punch out and walk toward the brickyard, which is just a muddy patch out back with a few broken benches and the faint smell of sewage. You sit beside your sister. She hands you half her potato. It's cold and blackened, but you thank her like she gave you gold. Your friend George comes over with a weird grin on his face. "Guess what?" he whispers. "My cousin saw a man eat a raw rat. Bet I could do it too." You shake your head. "Only if you want typhus," you say, and he just laughs and throws a pebble at a pigeon. You spend your 30-minute break mostly staring at nothing. Some kids sleep sitting up, others sneak a smoke. You just try to keep your hands warm. When the horn blares again, you all rise like the dead. Back into the mill, back into the roar. 14 hours total. You're only halfway there. You step back inside and it's like entering the belly of some great mechanical beast. Hot breath, constant growl and nowhere to hide. The door swings shut behind you and seals you back into the grinding, groaning rhythm of the factory. Your feet squish slightly in your wet boots. You never got a chance to dry them out during lunch, and now the cold seeps into your toes like little stabs of ice. But there's no time to complain. You jog back to your station, weaving through a maze of whirring belts and shaking metal frames. The overseer doesn't like dawdling, and you don't want to catch his eye again today. The machine that was vibrating funny earlier? Still vibrating. Worse even. You feel the tremors through the floorboards now. Subtle, like something big is moving underfoot. You keep your distance, focusing on your own station and your own set of threads. You tell yourself it's not your problem. Not yet. Few rows over, your friend James, he's a wiry kid with a permanent squint, gives you a quick nod. That's all the conversation you get. His job's even worse than yours. He works on the carding machine where the raw cotton gets cleaned and separated. Sounds fine in theory, until you remember that cotton is full of microscopic dust that coats your lungs like chalk. In fact, here's a bit of industrial trivia for you. Workers in cotton mills developed something called bisonosis, or as they called it then, brown lung. No medals for guessing what caused it. All those years breathing in airborne cotton fluff? Yeah, that stuff doesn't go away. It settles in, sets up shop, and slowly suffocates you from the inside. You're not coughing yet, but give it a year, maybe 2. The minutes drag. The light outside fades quickly this time of year, and by 4 p.m. it's already hard to tell if it's day or night. The factory doesn't care. The lamps above flicker with gaslight, casting everything in a sickly yellow hue. You're sweating through your shirt now, even though your fingers are still cold. And then it happens. There's a loud crack, sharp, violent, and a burst of steam erupts from the ceiling pipes. You duck instinctively, heart hammering. The loom that was shaking earlier, it's come apart. A huge belt snaps off its pulley and lashes through the air like a flailing serpent. You hear a thud. Someone's hit. Screams follow. The machines keep spinning. They don't care that a boy's just been flung 10 feet into a wall. Chaos blooms for exactly 8 seconds before the overseers start barking orders. Shut it down! Cut power to row 4. Tools clatter. Sparks fly. A few workers try to help the injured boy. Tom, you think his name is. But Mr. Clench yells at them to back off. Don't touch him. You'll make it worse. You freeze, holding your breath, watching as the kid lies still, blood pooling under his shoulder, a leg bent the wrong way. His eyes are open, but they're not focused. Eventually the factory doctor arrives. That's a generous title. Is really just a guy in a coat with a leather bag and a grim expression. He kneels down, pokes Tom a few times, then gives Mr. Clench a curt nod. Alive. For now. They carry him out on a wooden board. Everyone's quiet for a minute. Then the overseers clap their hands and shout, "Back to work!" And just like that, the machine noise rises again. The only thing that's changed is the smear of blood on the floor and the empty station where Tom used to be. You go back to piecing. What happened just now? Not an accident. Not really. It was bound to happen. These machines aren't maintained properly, and the pressure to keep them running is relentless. Safety costs money, replacing children, practically free. This is why, years later, the British government will pass the Factories Acts, legislation meant to regulate working hours, improve conditions, and stop kids under 10 from doing jobs that could rip their limbs off. But here's the kicker. The laws are full of loopholes. Some factories ignore them entirely. Others lie about the ages of their workers. And inspectors, usually bribed. There's still debate today about how effective these laws were. Did they actually save lives, or were they just for show? An early form of industrial PR. Depends who you ask. But for now, in your factory, nothing's changed. You're running low on energy. Your hands are sluggish. You've pricked your finger 3 times in the last hour, and there's blood smeared on your shirt, but you don't even notice. The girl next to you sneezes, sending cotton fluff into the air like it's snowing. Your throat burns. And now comes the part of the day everyone dreads, the surprise inspection. Not of the machines, of you. Mr. Clench marches down the rows with a clipboard and a metal ruler. He stops beside each worker, squints at their station, then looks at their posture, their output, their pace. If you're not fast enough, you get docked. If your area's messy, you get docked. If you look tired, docked. When he reaches you, you try not to blink. You stand straight, hands poised above the loom like you're in control, even though your knees feel like porridge. He peers at your work, then narrows his eyes. "That spool's uneven," he mutters. You swallow. "It won't happen again, sir." He smacks the ruler against the frame, just hard enough to startle you. "See that it doesn't." He moves on. You let out a breath and keep going. Back at your sister's station, she's wiping her nose with a threadbare sleeve. Her face is pale. You hope she doesn't faint again. She did once last summer, and Mr. Clench dumped a bucket of water on her head instead of letting her rest. You're not even sure what time it is anymore. There's no clock in sight, and your internal sense of time left your body somewhere around lunchtime. It's just task after task, thread after thread, the clack of the loom and the sting of cotton splinters. Eventually, mercifully, the final bell rings. Quitting time. Not that you can celebrate. Your spine feels like it's been compacted. Your arms are limp. You're coughing now. That's new. You press a scarf to your mouth as you shuffle out the door with the others, all of you moving like ghosts. You step into the night air and the cold hits your sweaty skin like a slap. You're soaked, sore, hungry, and already dreading tomorrow. But you survived another day, barely. You're not walking home. Not really. You're more drifting, like a sad leaf on a cold breeze, just sort of floating forward with everyone else. Your legs are working, but your mind checked out 3 looms ago. The factory's behind you now, but it's still in your ears. The dull roaring of gears, the hissing steam, the clang of metal on metal, all humming under your skin like an echo that doesn't fade. The street's dark. Gas lamps flicker weakly above, casting orange light over puddles, cobblestones, and the occasional pile of horse droppings. Somewhere in the distance, a street vendor is shouting about hot pies, but you know better. Those pies, half flour, half mystery meat. One time someone found a pigeon beak in theirs. Your sister walks beside you quiet, holding a bucket of lint like it's a purse. She hasn't said much since lunch. You can tell her head's pounding too. Her face is pale again, and her eyes look too big for her cheeks. She's 8 years old. What a fun age to start thinking about arthritis. The streets are crowded with workers like you. Most keep their heads down. A few of the older boys sneak off toward the gin house, laughing louder than necessary, probably already picturing their first swig of something that'll burn away the day. One woman in a patched-up shawl is yelling about her landlord. Someone else is vomiting behind a cart. It's a scene, really. And you're just one tired extra in this ongoing play. You pass a group of men in tall coats walking briskly, hats pulled low. They're middle class, not factory folk. Maybe clerks or lawyers or someone who's never touched a spinning frame in their life. They don't look at you. You don't exist in their world. And here's where we pause for your daily dose of quirky Victorian trivia. There was actually a class of men called pure finders who made their living collecting dog poop. Why? Because tanneries used it to process leather. Yep. People were paid in pennies to walk the streets scooping pure. So if you ever think your job is terrible, remember that someone out there had a literal poop bucket and called it a career. Anyway, back to you. Future arthritic, possible bisonosis haver, and proud owner of 2 soaking boots. You finally reach your tenement, which is basically a decaying brick box crammed with families like yours. The smell hits first. Stale bread, coal smoke, unwashed socks, and something vaguely fishy that's definitely not fish. You open the warped door and step into the single room you all share. Mum's there, scrubbing something in a tin basin. She looks up, gives you a tired smile that doesn't reach her eyes, then goes back to wringing out the rag. The baby's still coughing. Your brother is passed out on a stool near the fire, mouth open, drooling. You get the better corner tonight, under the window next to the leaking bucket. You sit down and peel off your boots. Your socks are more holes than fabric, and your feet are shriveled from being damp all day. You wiggle your toes to prove to yourself you still can. Barely. Your sister lies down near the fire, curling up like a cat. No words, just one long sigh. You figure she'll be asleep in 5 minutes. You won't be far behind. But first, supper, it's porridge. Again, it always is. Thick, grey and flavourless, with the occasional lump for excitement. Your mum hands you a bowl and a crust of bread. You don't ask what's in the porridge. No one does. You just eat it, because being full, sort of, is better than being hungry. A rat scurries along the wall behind you. He's bold tonight, probably sensing everyone's too tired to chase him. You raise an eyebrow and give him a sarcastic little salute. He's surviving this too, after all. Now, about that whole Victorian families were tight-knit and wholesome narrative. Not always. You care about each other, sure, but when everyone's sick, starving and sore, there's not a lot of time for hugs and family board games. Survival is the priority. You love each other in the way soldiers in a trench love each other. Quietly, desperately, without ceremony. And speaking of desperation, there's a knock at the door. You freeze. Mum stands, wiping her hands on her apron. Opens it. It's the landlord's man. He's got a ledger under one arm and a face carved out of potatoes. "Rent's due Thursday," he says flatly. "Miss it again and we'll be replacing you." Your mum nods, too polite to argue. He leaves. You all sit there, silent for a minute. Rent's a constant threat. It's not just the factory that can kick you out. Your home can too. And there's nowhere else to go except the workhouse. You've heard stories. Places where they split up families, shave your head and feed you with a slingshot. Okay, maybe not that last part, but still, not somewhere you want to end up. Once the baby finally quiets, and the fire dies down to a whisper, you crawl into bed. Or what passes for one. It's a straw mattress with more lumps than a poorly made pie, and the blanket smells like every illness known to man. You lie there, staring at the mould on the ceiling, trying not to breathe too deeply. Your throat scratches anyway. And now comes the worst part of the day. The stillness. When the noise fades, and there's nothing to do but think. Your mind replays the loom accident, the belt snapping, the blood. You wonder if Tom's okay. You wonder if Anna's hair will ever grow back. You wonder how many more days like this you can take. And then your mind does something dangerous. It wanders. It imagines another life, one where you go to school, wear clean clothes, sleep in a bed that doesn't sag in the middle. You picture reading books instead of lint-filled ledgers. You picture dinner with meat, with flavour. But the world feels impossibly far away, a fantasy. And even if you made it out of this town, where would you go? You've never seen the countryside. You've only heard stories from old men who claim it smells better out there. You're not even sure if that's true. Scholars argue today about whether industrialisation improved lives in the long run. Sure, it raised GDP. Sure, it eventually led to unions and workers' rights. But for kids like you, the day-to-day reality wasn't progress. It was survival, with a side of scurvy. You close your eyes and hope you wake up. The whistle blows. Again. You jolt awake like someone yanked your soul out of sleep with a hook. It's still dark, of course it is, and the air in the room feels like cold soup with coal floating in it. Your neck aches. You're not sure if you slept or just lost consciousness for a few hours. Either way, it wasn't enough. Your first thought, maybe the factory burned down overnight. You sit up, hopeful for exactly 1 second before reality flicks your forehead. Nope. The rickety building is still standing, probably grinning in the dark, just waiting for you to come back. Your mum's already up, feeding the fire with a few scraps of wood. She doesn't say anything. She's too busy fighting the day into existence. Your sister's still asleep, curled into herself like a comma. You nudge her gently. Her eyes open halfway and she groans like a ghost who just remembered they still have to haunt people. Toast today? Huh, not a chance. Breakfast is a thin slop that used to be oats. It sloshes in your bowl like something alive. You chew it out of obligation, not desire. Then it's the boots again, damp, freezing. One has a nail sticking up inside, which means you'll be limping by lunchtime. You try to stuff an extra scrap of fabric in there to cushion it, but the fabric just slides sideways. Fine, let the nail win. Outside, the cold is somehow worse than yesterday. The kind of cold that bites, but only because it's bored. Your breath fogs up immediately. The cobbled street shines with frost, and your hands already feel numb, which is inconvenient because you'll need them for not getting mangled by machines in about 20 minutes. Your feet crunch over old newspapers and rat tracks as you join the silent parade of workers heading to the mill. You don't talk, no one does. The only sound is coughing, boots on stone, and the occasional "Oi, move it," from behind. And today's highlight? Mr. Clench is waiting at the gate. He stands tall and still like he hasn't slept. Like maybe he doesn't sleep at all. Maybe he just folds into a drawer every night like a cursed mannequin and wakes up to ruin your life with fresh energy. His eyes scan the crowd like a hawk that hates its job. Someone stumbles behind you, nearly knocking you into the wall. Mr. Clench clocks it instantly. You, faster. The poor kid nods and sprints toward the entrance, nearly tripping over his own scarf. Inside the mill it's warm, but not in a good way. It's the heat of breath, oil, steam, and bodies, like a pot that's always about to boil. You step into it, and your skin starts to sweat immediately, even though your fingertips are still blue. You make it to your station. The loom's already been reset from yesterday's accident, which makes your stomach twist, like nothing happened. No repair tags, no warning signs, just business as usual. Tom's station remains empty, though. There's a broom leaning against his stool, like he's been replaced by a cleaning tool. The machines start up again, louder than your thoughts. You fall back into rhythm, thread, tie, cut, feed, repeat. Your body does the work while your mind detaches. It has to, otherwise you'd go completely mad. But today, there's something new, something different. There's a visitor on the factory floor, and you only catch a glimpse. Tall man, grey coat, shiny buttons, notebook. He's not dressed like the rest of you. He's dry, clean, important looking. Beside him walks the factory owner, Mr. Fletcher, who only shows his face when someone's inspecting something, or when there's a camera around. You don't stop working. That's rule number 1. But your eyes follow them in flickers. The visitor leans down to ask a girl her age. She lies, of course. Says she's 13. She's probably 10, maybe 9 if she's had a rough year. He writes something down, frowns at her hands and moves on. Later you'll find out he was a government inspector, a rare breed, sent to ensure the factory is following new labour laws about child workers. Are they? Only when the inspectors are watching. Fun fact, the Factory Acts required children to be at least 9 to work in textile mills. Employers got around this by losing birth records or just lying. Enforcement was patchy at best, and many inspectors were given exactly 0 tools or staff to make any real difference. Still, for a few brief minutes, the factory pretends to be humane. Mr. Clench stops yelling. The overseers even hand out clean rags to wipe down machinery. Your sister gets moved to a less obvious position, hidden behind a stack of crates. You try not to look surprised. As the inspector walks by, he glances at you. You meet his eyes, just for a second. And in that second, something strange happens. You see pity. It's quick, barely there. But it flickers in his expression before he scribbles something into his notebook. It makes you uncomfortable. You don't want pity. You want gloves that aren't full of holes and a job that doesn't want to eat your limbs. Eventually, the inspector and Mr. Fletcher disappear into the back office. The factory exhales like it's been holding its breath. Mr. Clench returns to shouting, "Your sister's moved back to the scavenger zone. Everything's normal again. Awful, but normal." You check your finger. The thread sliced it open again. Tiny cut, just enough to sting like betrayal. You wrap it with part of your sleeve and keep going. Hours pass. Your friend George, yes, the one who almost ate a rat, is next to you now, replacing a broken bobbin. "Reckon the inspector saw me," he shouts over the machines, grinning. "I'm famous now." You don't laugh. You're too tired. Lunch comes. This time, it's a turnip. No bread. You don't ask where your mum got it. You just eat it raw, your teeth grinding through the tough flesh like you're chewing a tree root. Someone's crying behind the crate pile. Sounds like your sister. You want to check on her, but the horn's already blaring again. Break's over. The afternoon drags. You go deaf to the sound again. Your eyes blur. You almost get caught when one of your threads snaps and you don't notice. Mr. Clench walks past, but he's too busy yelling at someone else to care. You wish for something ridiculous, a nap in a bed. with silence. Can you even imagine? It's finally quitting time. Your legs carry you home like they're made of rope and regret. The streets are darker than usual. Fog's rolling in thick now, and the lamps barely do anything except make it look like ghosts are dancing in the distance. You reach home. Your sister's already curled up on the mattress, her face still streaked from crying. You sit down beside her, back against the wall, and you think, is this it? For the rest of my life? But you're too tired to answer. Morning again. You don't even remember falling asleep, but now it's back to the same sounds. Coughing, footsteps upstairs, the creak of boards, the far-off whistle, your daily reminder that your time is no longer yours. Your joints pop as you move, like your body's trying to break itself apart in protest. Too bad. Time to go earn a wage that might cover a quarter of next week's rent, assuming no accidental dockings. You dress in silence, same clothes, same smell. The nail in your boot has now evolved into a full-blown personality. You've named it Henry, and he hates you. Downstairs, your mum hands you a lump of something greyish. Bread, she says. She might be right. It's hard to tell. You chew it on the walk to the mill, which today feels even longer than usual. The fog's thick, and your breath ghosts out in front of you like it's trying to escape before you do. You're halfway to the factory when you hear it. A deep, shrill voice cutting through the fog like a rusty knife. Chimney sweeps. Who's small? You freeze. That's never good. A man in a tall hat is standing near the factory gate, holding a clipboard and looking around like he's hunting mice. Mr. Clench stands beside him, a smug twist on his face like he's just ordered fresh child labour à la carte. You've heard the rumours. Chimney sweeping isn't a job you apply for, it's a job someone else volunteers you for. And the requirements: be small, be nimble, be expendable. Mr. Clench scans the group of kids stumbling in. His eyes land on your sister. Your stomach drops. She's tiny. She's fast. She's exactly the kind of child these chimney men love. But then miraculously his eyes shift, and they land on you. Oi! He barks. How old are you? You lie before your mouth even realises it. 13, sir, he smirks. Perfect. Congratulations. You're reassigned. Up the flue you go. And just like that, your whole day changes. Forget the loom. Forget the constant mechanical roar. Today you're crawling through pitch-black chimneys, scraping soot with your hands and praying you don't get stuck or pass out from the fumes. You don't get a choice. You're handed off to the sweep master like a tool. He gives you a crooked smile and a burlap sack filled with brushes. Ever been up a flue before? You shake your head. Good. Means you won't overthink it. The cart you're riding in smells like burnt tar and old shoes. You're sandwiched between two other kids. One's missing eyebrows, the other won't stop twitching. First time? Twitchy asks. You nod. He pats your arm. Hope you ain't claustrophobic. You arrive at the house, a tall brick row home in the better part of town. Still foggy, still cold, but here the streets are clean, and the windows have curtains that don't look like old rags. You follow the sweep master inside. The house is nice, too nice. Marble floors, fancy wallpaper, polished wood. A maid lets you in, barely glancing at you before disappearing into a back room. You don't belong here, and every stick of furniture knows it. The chimney you're assigned to is narrow, terrifyingly narrow. You look up and see nothing, just a black tunnel that swallows the ceiling. The sweep master nods toward it. Get up there, scrub on the way, knock when you reach the top. You want to ask questions. How do I breathe? What if I get stuck? But instead you start climbing. Immediately the walls close in. You can't stand, you can't stretch, you can't even turn your head properly. The air is thick with soot and every breath tastes like burnt rubber and firewood. You start coughing almost instantly, but you can't stop moving or the sweep master will assume you're slacking. You scrub with one hand while pulling yourself up with the other, knees scraping brick. Black dust gets in your mouth, your nose, your eyes. Your shirt rides up, and now your stomachs roar from the bricks. You keep going. Up, up, up. It's darker than anything you've ever experienced. There's no light, no air, no space to think. You're just movement. You don't even feel like a person anymore, more like a rat trapped in a drain pipe. Here's the horrifying part. Some chimneys were barely 9 inches wide. Children, yes, children, were forced into these gaps, often naked, and told to climb until they hit daylight or passed out. If they got stuck, another child might be sent in to push them. Sometimes that child got stuck too. You can see where this is going. The open debate, whether society knew how dangerous this was. Short answer, oh, they knew. Long answer, they didn't care enough to stop until years later, when public outcry and gruesome deaths finally forced Parliament to ban the use of child sweeps. But in your moment, right now, you're alone in a death tunnel. Halfway up, your knee slips. Your back scrapes hard against the brick. You scream involuntarily, just a short yelp, and the sound disappears into the soot. You pause, panting, your chest burning. Your face is black, your fingers are bleeding. There's still more chimney to go, so you keep climbing. When you finally reach the top, you tap the metal cap with your brush, just like they told you. A faint clang echoes down. You sit there, coughing uncontrollably, trying to pull air into lungs that now feel like they're filled with charcoal. Then comes the worst part, the way down. Gravity helps, sure, but it's not gentle. You have to slide, bracing yourself just enough to avoid free fall. Your elbows and knees knock against every ridge. It's like being swallowed by a giant brick monster who hates you specifically. When you finally spill out onto the floor again, you're not even human. You're a pile of soot and skin. The sweepmaster barely looks at you. Good. Next one. You want to cry, but there's no time. You move on to the next house and the next and the next. 3 chimneys by noon. By the 4th, your hands are shaking too much to grip the brush. The sweepmaster finally shrugs. Fine, you're done. Go back to the mill. You limp back to the factory, black from head to toe. Mr. Clench scowls when he sees you. Disgraceful, he mutters, eyeing the soot smeared across your shirt. Clean yourself up. Don't shame the floor. You return to your loom for the last hour of the day, barely able to lift your arms. Every part of your body screams, but somehow you keep moving. You're the kind of tired that doesn't go away with sleep, the kind of tired that sits in your bones like mould in the wall. And tomorrow might be chimneys again. You don't remember falling asleep last night. You just know you woke up choking. Your lungs feel like someone stuffed them with ash and then stomped on them for good measure. There's black gunk on your pillow, well, your corner of the straw pile, and a new scrape along your ribcage that started to stick to your shirt. A souvenir from the chimney, maybe? Hard to keep track. Mum frowns when she sees you hacking up soot. You're not going up there again, she says firmly, passing you a cup of hot water she's pretending is tea. Not today. You want to believe her. Really, you do. But this is the same woman who once let your brother go to work with a fever so high he thought the spinning Jenny was talking to him. You pull on your shirt, wincing as it clings to yesterday's wounds. Henry the nail is still living rent-free in your boot, and now his cousin, let's call her Hilda the blister, has taken up residence on your heel. Everything smells like smoke, even your teeth. Outside, it's raining again. Not a dramatic, thunderous storm, just that annoying drizzle that turns the air to soup and the streets to sludge. You join the river of damp, exhausted workers all heading in the same direction, like lemmings marching to a very noisy cliff. When you reach the mill gates, Mr. Clench gives you a look, a long one. His nose wrinkles at the lingering chimney stink. Back to the looms today, he says, as if he's doing you a favour. Thank you, sir, you reply automatically, though you're pretty sure sarcasm is leaking out of your pores at this point. Back inside is more of the same, clattering, thumping, grinding. The roar swells until it wraps around your head like a too-tight scarf. But at least here, in this terrible, chaotic noise, you're just another worker. No flues, no soot, just threads and broken fingernails and the usual looming sense of doom. You take your place by the loom. It's still stained from the blood someone cleaned half-heartedly with a rag last week. You tie in your first thread of the day and get to work. Your hands are slower than usual, and Mr. Clench notices. Of course he does. "Speed up," he barks, "or I'll speed you up." Whatever that means, you don't want to find out. So you do your best. You fall into the rhythm again. Thread, feed, check, tie. It's awful, but familiar. Comforting, in a messed up way. Your brain shuts off, letting your hands take over while you drift into the kind of half-aware state usually reserved for monks or people stuck in terrible first dates. Now, since we're back on the factory floor, here's a delightful historical tidbit. During the Victorian period, some factories employed small boys as strap oilers. Their job? To crawl under moving machines to oil the belts while the machines were running. These kids had to stay perfectly flat because if they sat up too early, well, let's just say their shift ended permanently. You're lucky your current job doesn't involve ducking under rotating death traps. Yet. You hear a thump nearby. Someone dropped a bobbin, and a scream follows almost instantly. You turn in time to see a girl, maybe 10, clutching her hand. Blood streams down her palm like spilled paint. The overseer grabs her by the arm, examines the injury and grumbles. She'll be fine. Get her wrapped and back online. But she's not fine. Her fingers are bent the wrong way. She's shaking. 2 older kids guide her away while the machine keeps running. Again, the factory never stops. By lunchtime, your stomach is trying to consume itself. You chew slowly through something that's supposed to be a meat pie, but the meat is definitely theoretical. It's chewy, grey, and has the vague aftertaste of despair. Still, it's better than nothing. Your sister finds you in the brickyard, her face flushed. "I heard Tom died," she says softly. Your gut goes cold. Tom, the boy who got hit when the loom broke. You haven't seen him in days. You assumed he was home, or in the infirmary, or maybe just gone. You nod slowly. "Yeah, I figured." That's how it goes. People disappear. Sometimes they come back. Sometimes they don't. And nobody does anything because there's 100 more kids waiting to take their place. Your sister looks up at you. Will that happen to me? You hate that question because you want to lie. You want to say, "No, never, you'll be fine, I'll protect you." But you don't have that power, so instead you just say, "Not if I can help it." She nods, accepting that as the best answer anyone gets around here. The horn blows, back inside. The rest of the day drips by like old molasses. The machines snarl, your hands cramp, and someone gets their sleeve caught in a belt, resulting in a terrifying half-second before the fabric rips, and he stumbles back, coughing and laughing nervously. The entire room watched that moment with wide eyes and clenched jaws. You wonder what would have happened if it had been skin instead of cloth. By the end of the shift, you've lost track of time, feeling, and possibly part of your soul. The overseer does his rounds, checking quotas. Yours is slightly below average. He clicks his tongue but doesn't say anything. Small mercies. As you exit the factory, the rain stopped, but everything is soaked and smells like rust. Walking home, you notice George, the rat guy, staring at a help-wanted poster. It's for the docks. He turns to you, eyes wild. They're hiring. A penny more a day than the mill. You raise an eyebrow. You know how to load ships? He shrugs. How hard can it be? You both know it's probably awful, maybe even worse than here. But at least it's different. And here's where we get into an interesting historical wrinkle. Despite the horror of factory life, many workers, especially kids, chose to stay. Why? Because outside the factory walls was no promised land. Domestic service paid less and often came with worse abuse. Agricultural labour was backbreaking and unstable. The factory might have been a nightmare, but at least it was predictable. You reach home. Mum's asleep upright in a chair. The baby's crying. Your brother's kicking in his sleep like he's fighting invisible demons. You lie down, boots still on, too sore to move, and you realise something. You're starting to get used to this. And that might be the scariest thing of all. You wake up to the sound of a rat chewing something that might be your sock. Not that it matters. You are going to toss that sock into the eternal pit of textile despair anyway, since it now resembles a half-shredded napkin. You nudge the rat away with your foot. It squeaks at you like you're the rude one, and scamper off into the darkness under the cot. Another day, another 14 hours of machine-induced trauma. This time you're actually hoping for loom duty, not because it's good, but because it's known. After yesterday's flirtation with the world of soot and domestic privilege, you've realised that chimney sweeping is like volunteering to be digested by a brick snake. At least the factory doesn't pretend to be nice. You're halfway out the door, scarf slung around your neck and boots making that familiar squish with every step, when your sister catches up to you, already out of breath. She looks like she didn't sleep at all, which means she probably did sleep, just not well. "I heard they're bringing in a new inspector today," she whispers. You nod. "That's what George said." "Maybe they'll shut the place down," she says, eyes wide. You don't want to crush her hopes, but come on. The factory has weathered worse than inspectors, and if someone did try to shut it down, they'd probably be replaced by lunchtime. The streets are wet but not icy. That's something at least. You pass a man yelling about eels for breakfast, a couple fighting over who stole whose soap, and a young girl selling matches who looks about 5. You don't stop. If you did, you'd never make it back. Inside the mill, everything's already vibrating. The looms are warming up like metal dragons, belts snapping into place, steam leaking from joints no one has time to fix. You take your spot, say hello to the machine with a sigh, and begin again. Thread, tie, feed, repeat. Today, though, something's off. There's tension in the air. Mr. Clench is pacing more than usual, and the overseers are trying to smile, which is as unnatural as rats doing ballet. You spot the reason soon enough. The new inspector, tall and stiff-backed, is moving slowly down the row of machines. He's got shiny shoes, white gloves, and the face of someone who probably owns more than one fork. Behind him is Mr. Fletcher, the factory owner, sweating slightly despite the chill. He keeps gesturing to machinery like a proud tour guide at the gates of industrial hell. The inspector stops in front of a boy, asks him how many hours he works. The boy hesitates, says 8, lies through his teeth, because saying 14 gets you in trouble just as much as it does the factory. The inspector writes something down anyway. He's new, you can tell. He's actually noticing things. He sees a broken safety guard on one of the looms and frowns. He asks why there's no emergency stop mechanism. Mr. Fletcher gives a rehearsed answer about cost efficiency and trust in our workforce. You almost gag. The inspector moves on, reaching your sister's station. She straightens up, wipes her face, says nothing. "How old are you?" he asks. She hesitates. 10, sir." Another lie. Mr. Fletcher beams. "One of our senior girls." The inspector raises an eyebrow. "Senior? At 10? Well, she's mature for her age." He nods slowly and scribbles something in his book. You want to believe this guy is different, that maybe he'll shut the whole place down, or at least fine it into oblivion. But you've seen too much to hope too hard. Later, during your break, George appears beside you with half a bread crust and a look of serious excitement. "Did you hear?" he says around a mouthful. The inspector actually wrote down the thing about the broken loom and the missing safety guard. I saw it. You blink. He noticed the loom. Yeah, the same one that mangled Tom. You sit there in stunned silence, chewing on your own bit of stale lunch like it's suddenly got flavour. Maybe things are changing, slowly, like a rusty door finally creaking open. Now let's pause for your history nugget of the night. During the Victorian era, reformers like Lord Ashley and the 10 Hours movement actually did push through legislation that reduced working hours and raised the minimum age. But enforcement, spotty, and corrupt factory owners found loopholes. One factory would comply by rotating children in and out of view when inspectors visited. Another just gave kids fake school certificates to make it seem like they were part-time students. Industrial hide and seek. The debate now among historians is whether these reforms were genuinely motivated by concern for children, or whether they were just moral posturing by upper-class reformers trying to soothe their own guilt. You know how that goes. Anyway, back to you. The machines roar back to life and the inspector vanishes into the upstairs offices. You're running your loom when something strange happens. The power dips. For half a second, all the machines stutter. The belts hesitate. You hear a weird lurch, a groan from the overhead wheels, and the entire room collectively holds its breath. Then, everything surges back. But your machine doesn't. The loom in front of you goes dead. No warning. No motion. Just silence. Which is somehow worse than noise. You step back, unsure what to do. You've never had to stop. Stopping isn't a thing. Mr. Clench storms over in seconds. What happened? I don't know, you say. It just stopped. He inspects the mechanism, mutters something under his breath, and waves over a mechanic. You'll clean until it's fixed, he says, tossing you a rag. You spend the next hour wiping soot off pipes and oil off gears. It's quieter work, but it gives your thoughts room to breathe. That's dangerous. You start wondering about the inspector, about what he saw, about whether the rumours are true, that some factories are getting shut down, that workers in the south are getting lunch breaks longer than 30 minutes. Madness. You hear your sister sneeze from across the floor. Her face is pale again. You make a mental note to check on her later. By end of shift, your loom is still broken. Mr. Clench grumbles something about replacement parts, but you suspect it's more serious. If the inspector saw it, really saw it, it might not come back at all. Walking home feels lighter tonight. Not physically, your feet still hurt and Henry the nail is still out for blood, but mentally. There's a sliver of possibility hanging in the fog, like something might change. You glance at your sister. Her eyes are half closed as she walks. Maybe we'll get tomorrow off, she whispers. You smile despite yourself. Sure, and maybe we'll eat pudding made of diamonds. She bumps your arm. Shut up! The streetlights flicker above. The night smells of chimney smoke and mud. But beneath it all, something else lingers. Hope. Tiny. Fragile. Almost offensive given the circumstances. But still there. You don't get the day off. Of course you don't. Hope was cute while it lasted. Like a decorative candle on a sinking ship. But when the morning whistle shrieks, it slices through your skull just the same, and your body reacts on pure muscle memory. Out of bed. On with the boots. Shove something edible into your mouth. Out the door before you're considered late, which in Mr. Clench's vocabulary means a burden, a disgrace, and possibly a candidate for public flogging. The factory looms ahead in the fog like a wounded beast, still breathing, still growling, still hungry. You do notice something weird, though. There's a small crowd gathered just outside the mill gate, not the usual tired trickle of workers. This is a knot of people talking in whispers, peeking over shoulders, trying to look casual and failing completely. You squeeze through and spot what they're all staring at. A notice. Pasted right on the factory gate in red ink, it reads, Inspection results. Equipment to be repaired immediately. Children under 10 to be removed from floor 2. Effective immediately. Work week capped at 12 hours per day. Enforced with random checks. You blink and then blink again. Because this isn't nothing. It's not freedom. It's not a vacation to the seaside, but it's a wedge. a crack in the cement, a sign that someone outside noticed, and maybe, just maybe, they cared enough to do something. You feel your sister squeeze your hand beside you. She's reading the notice too. "Does this mean I can go home?" she whispers. You scan the fine print, floor 2 only. She's on floor 1. You shake your head. "Not yet." And just like that, hope gets kicked back down the stairs. Inside, things are 10% more tense than usual. Mr. Clench is snapping orders with double volume. Overseers are scribbling things on clipboards that have been blank since the dawn of time. A couple of the smaller kids have been shunted to storage duty, whatever that means. You suspect it's just a way to get them off the visible factory floor until the next surprise inspection. But the machines, still running, still loud, still just as eager to eat whatever part of you strays too close. Your own loom's still broken. That earns you a temporary promotion, machine cleaner, fancy title. Means you get to crawl into oily corners and scrub gears that haven't seen light since the Napoleonic Wars. You head toward the machine shop, past a wall of tools and oily cloths, and then you find yourself alone, which is rare. You pause, take a breath. Let your ears ring in the strange, sudden silence of not being surrounded by 40 shrieking looms. It's like walking out of a thunderstorm into a vacuum. Your skin still buzzes, but the air feels clear. You sit for a minute on an overturned bucket and let your brain exist. Now, here's a weird fringe fact for your growing collection of Victorian trauma trivia. Some factory workers reportedly preferred their jobs to school. Not because they hated learning, but because schools in factory towns were often understaffed, under-resourced, and built more like holding pens than actual educational institutions. Some kids claimed that, at least in the factory, they could count on lunch. Wild, huh? You look at the machine you're supposed to clean. A belt-fed beast with exposed gears and a scar across the metal where someone lost a hand last year. You heard about it. You even saw the hand. Well, what was left of it? You get to work. It's slow, miserable cleaning. The kind that makes you wish you could jump ahead in time to when robots do all this. Or better yet, when humans stop designing jobs that require being an expendable body with decent hand-eye coordination. You're halfway through scraping grease from a pulley when George finds you. He's bouncing on the balls of his feet, a rare thing to see in someone who works 14-hour shifts with the enthusiasm of a brick. "I heard something," he says, in that conspiratorial tone he uses when he's either got something amazing or something totally made up. You wait. There's a group. People meeting in the gin hall after dark. Workers, talking about striking. You frown. Striking? Like refusing to work? George nods fast. All at once. No notice. They say if enough of us do it, Mr. Fletcher will have to listen. You stare at him. Or he'll just fire all of us. Not if it's everyone, George insists. He can't replace everyone. That's optimistic. And dangerous. The word strike alone is enough to get you blacklisted from half the mills in the region. There's no real protection, no union that covers you. If the bosses decide you're a problem, you're out, and they'll make sure no one else takes you either. But still, something stirs. The idea latches onto your ribs like a hook. The idea that maybe, there's power in numbers. That if every soot-covered, bone-tired, finger-missing kid stood up at the same time and said, no, maybe that would matter. There's historical truth in that too. Workers' collectives in the mid to late 1800s did begin forming the first true labour unions. They faced opposition, arrest, even violence. But slowly, over years, they changed the system. Not because someone gave them permission, but because they stopped asking. Back on the factory floor, the clamour of machines swallows your thoughts again. Mr. Clench is red in the face, shouting about output targets and wasted thread. Your sister trips over a box and gets smacked for it. You grind your teeth. When the final horn blares, your shoulders drop in relief so hard it's like your skeleton is collapsing. Outside, you walk slower than usual. George is beside you. still electric with possibility. "You'll come?" he asks. "To the meeting?" You shrug. "Maybe." You reach your tenement and climb the stairs like you're made of wet cement. Inside, it's quieter than normal. Mum's asleep already. The baby's whimpering in a blanket nest. Your brother's not home yet. You don't ask why, you just collapse onto the mattress. But that idea George planted, it's not leaving. You stare at the ceiling, watching the flickering shadows from the street lamp play across the peeling plaster. And you wonder what would happen if, just once, you didn't show up tomorrow. You don't sleep. Not really. You drift. You hover. Your body is flat against the straw. Your arms limp. Your face pressed to a damp patch you decide not to investigate too closely. But your brain is marching in circles like it's got something urgent to say. The idea is still there. The one George planted like a weed. A strike. Not a tantrum. Not a skipped shift. A strike. A full-scale, get your hand off the loom, stand up and say something strike. You can't stop thinking about it. What it would feel like to stop. To stand, arms crossed, while the overseers screamed and the machine sat silent for the first time in their miserable lives. To not have to crawl, to not have to dodge belts and fists and blame. To finally be heard. It's wild, it's dangerous, and possibly it's all you've got. The whistle blows, because of course it does, and your eyes fly open like you weren't already waiting. You're up, dressed, and out the door before your sister even finishes yawning. She stares at you from under her headscarf. "You're early," she mutters. "I've got something." "Like what?" You glance at her, then lie. "Helping with the belts today. Early shift." It's not like she has time to question you. She has her own 14 hours of bone grinding to deal with. You walk together in the dim morning light, boots squelching through mud and frost. When you reach the corner near the gin house, you peel away. "Don't tell Mum," you whisper. Your sister watches you go with a raised eyebrow and a mouthful of half-chewed toast crust. The gin house doesn't open until late morning, but the back room, that's where things happen early. You knock twice, wait, then knock once more. A boy opens the door. He's older than you, face like a kitchen knife. His name's Theo, and he's the one George said to look for. "You here for the meeting?" he asks. You nod. He glances behind you, checks the street, then lets you in. Inside, the room smells like damp straw, burnt sugar, and revolution. There's maybe 15 people here, most your age or a little older, a few younger. One girl with a bandage across her face, one boy with no left hand. All of them tired, all of them angry. George waves you over, grinning like he's been chosen for a secret mission. "Told you they were serious," he whispers. Theo stands in front of the group, arms crossed. "They're not going to fix this place," he says. "The inspector came. Sure. But what changed?" Murmurs. "They patched a loom and hid the kids," someone mutters. "Nothing real changed," Theo continues. "Not the pay, not the hours, not the fists when we fall behind." Someone else nods. "They'll keep lying to inspectors. Then what? We just wait until another kid gets ground into gears." You shift on your feet. The floorboards creak. Theo eyes the room. We stop. One day. One shift. No one shows. They can't fire us all. He waits for silence. "We do it Friday," he says. "End of the week, when production's highest. That's when it hurts the most." Friday, 3 days from now. You feel your stomach twist. Someone raises a hand. "What if they bring in others?" "They will," Theo says. "But the point is to be seen, to scare them, to show them we're not cogs." There it is again. That feeling. Hope. Pressed in with terror. Wrapped in the soft skin of maybe. You stay for another hour, listening, nodding, not speaking much. At the end, Theo gives you a scrap of paper with a symbol drawn on it. A black thread coiled into a knot. "Pass it on if you trust someone," he says. "It means they're in." You pocket the paper, nod, and slip out the back door. Back on the factory floor, the noise feels different, like a countdown. You take your place at the loom, watching Mr. Clench pace as usual. Your sister's across the room, stuffing lint into a barrel, her tiny hands already grey from it. She doesn't know. Not yet. You want to tell her, but not yet. You go through the motions of your day with this secret bouncing in your chest like a locked-up bird. You tie thread, fix a jammed bobbin, clean spilled oil off the floor. It all feels heavier, more absurd, like miming for an audience that never claps. At lunch, you pass George the paper symbol. He nods. I gave one to Elsie and Mags. They're in. Your circle grows. By the end of the day, you've handed out 5 more. One to a boy who lost an eye last winter, one to a girl with burn scars on both arms, one to a quiet kid who hasn't spoken since his brother fell into a machine last year. None of them say much, but they take the paper. That night you sit by the fire with your sister. She's humming a song you don't know, picking straw out of her sleeves. You want to say something. You open your mouth, then close it. Because telling her means pulling her into it, risking her job, risking her. Instead you say, "Did you hear about Tom?" She nods. "People are saying it wasn't an accident." She freezes. "What do you mean?" "I mean," you say slowly, "that they knew the machine was broken, and they didn't stop it, and they let him work anyway." She doesn't speak for a while, then, "They don't care about us." No emotion, just fact. You nod. "Not yet." She glances at you. "But you think they will?" You shrug. "If enough of us make them." That's all you say. The next morning the factory runs as usual, but now you're watching for signs. A nod from George, a thread tied a certain way, a girl slipping a paper into someone's sleeve, tiny invisible signs of defiance. Friday's coming, and with it, the moment you all step away from your machines and finally find out if not working can be louder than the looms. Friday arrives like a fist through a window. The whistle screams at dawn, but this time you're already up, sitting on the edge of the straw mattress, wide-eyed and buzzing with the kind of nervous energy that turns your stomach inside out. It's strike day. Today. There's no toast, no tea. You don't even notice. You barely register your mum muttering about rent or your brother trying to find his other boot. All you can hear is the ticking of your heart and the phantom clatter of machines you don't plan to touch today. Your sister stares at you as you lace up your boots, painfully, slowly, because Henry the Nail is being extra spiteful. "You're not eating," she says. "Not hungry." She narrows her eyes. "You're shaking." "No, I'm not. You definitely are." She grabs her coat, coughing into the sleeve. Something's wrong. You hesitate, and then you reach into your pocket, pull out the small, crumpled paper with the coiled thread symbol, and place it in her palm. She stares at it. "What's this?" "A choice," you say, "if you want it." You don't say more. Just stand, open the door, and walk into the morning mist, leaving her behind on the threshold, holding the symbol. The walk to the factory feels different today. Not quieter. Still the same wet steps, same bleary stairs, but charged, like lightning in the fog. You recognize the signs now. The kids walking a little slower, heads lifted instead of down. The secret glances traded like cards. The symbols passed in handshakes, tucked into pockets, etched lightly into cuffs with chalk or dirt. You spot George near the corner, kicking a rock into the gutter. "You ready?" he asks, barely looking at you. You nod. "You?" He grins. "Been ready since I was 6. You slip into the factory like always, clock in with the chalkboard, and take your station at the loom. Your fingers automatically move to the controls, muscle memory guiding you. You even pull the first length of thread from the spool. But then you stop. At precisely 8:02 a.m, the first loom shuts off. Not because it's broken, because the girl at the controls, Elsie, steps back. A second later, the boy next to her does the same, then George. Then you. Across the floor like falling dominoes, the machines begin to quiet. One by one, hands are pulled away, threads left untied, power levers flicked down, spindles left spinning alone before sputtering to stillness. By 8:07 a.m, half the factory is silent. It's not full silence, not yet. The other half is still clattering along, confused. Overseers yelling, already moving in to investigate. Mr. Clench appears like a ghost summoned by disruption, red-faced and wide-eyed. "What is this?" he bellows. "What the hell is this?" No one answers. You just stand there, chest pounding, hands trembling, feet planted beside your loom. Clench storms through the rows like a furious ox. He grabs one boy by the collar. You think this is a game? The boy doesn't flinch. He just stares forward. Clench releases him, realizing there are too many. He can't drag everyone out. Mr. Fletcher arrives minutes later. He's not happy. His moustache twitches when he's angry, and right now it's practically doing a dance. He takes in the quiet machines, the workers standing still, and his face twists into disbelief. "Who started this?" he demands. "Who is responsible?" Again, no one speaks. That's the power. Everyone did it. No leader to punish. Just unity. Fletcher rants, threatens. "You'll be out on the street. Every one of you." Still, no movement. Someone near the back mutters, "Better the street than this place." He doesn't hear, or pretends not to. The standoff continues. Then the doors open again. You turn to look, and there's your sister. She walks in late, bold as anything, soot still on her cheeks from yesterday's shift, and she heads not to her station. She walks straight to you and stands beside your loom. That's it, that's all. But it's enough to push the quiet half over the edge. More kids step back. More looms go still. More threads are left dangling in midair. By 8:20 a.m, the factory is nearly silent. Only a handful of machines are still running, scattered kids too afraid to stop or maybe just not sure what's happening. And then, one by one, even those start to shut down, until it happens. The first full silence you've ever heard inside the mill. You can hear a cough, a footstep, the distant creak of the rafters. Mr. Fletcher stares out at the sea of faces, dirty, pale, exhausted, angry, and realizes he has a problem. Mr. Clench tries again. "This is unlawful. You will be punished." But even his voice sounds small in the silence. Then Theo steps forward. He's not loud. He doesn't raise his arms or make a speech. He just says, "Fix the machines, pay us fairly, stop hitting us, or we keep not working." That's it. That's the whole demand. Simple, impossible, revolutionary. Fletcher glares. His eyes bounce from face to face. He starts to say something, then thinks better of it. Instead, he turns and walks out. A few overseers follow. One slams a wrench against a bench on the way, just to hear something make noise again. Then it's just you, and the others, and the quiet. You stay like that for another 10 minutes, just standing, breathing, waiting. Then Theo nods once. That's enough for today. And the spell breaks. People start to shuffle out, quiet, purposeful. No cheering, no celebration, just steps, just unity. You walk home with your sister. She holds your hand, no words. Her hand is shaking, yours is too, but for the first time it doesn't feel like fear. It feels like aftershock, like something's shifted under the surface, something that won't settle back where it was. The next morning there's no whistle. At first you think you missed it. Maybe you slept through it somehow. Maybe it came and went and now you're late, again. And Mr. Clench is already jotting your name onto some invisible punishment list titled, "People I will scream at forever." But no, you're awake, you're dressed, and the whistle hasn't blown. You sit up slowly, feeling your ribs protest like creaky floorboards. Sunlight is creeping through the cracked window. Actual sunlight. not just greyish fog pretending to be light. That alone is enough to make the room feel unfamiliar. Your sister's already up, sitting cross-legged in the corner with a piece of stale bread and a look on her face that you can't quite name. "You hear it?" she asks. You shake your head. "That's because there's nothing to hear," she says. You both sit there for a long moment, just listening to the silence. No clanking boots in the hallway. No rush of workers pouring down the stairs. No parent shouting, "Move!" while smearing jam on toast like they're defibrillating their kids with sugar. Just nothing. Eventually your mum stirs from her corner. "Is the factory closed?" she mumbles, rubbing her temples. "Don't know," you reply, "but you have a guess." Outside, the street is almost dreamlike. No crowds, no coughing stampede. Just foggy cobblestones, half-dressed children blinking in the daylight like owls, and the occasional "What's going on?" muttered from behind half-open doors. You and your sister head toward the mill because what else are you going to do? The city hasn't stopped spinning just because you're shifted. The closer you get, the more people you see. Not working, not carrying buckets or pushing carts, just standing. You reach the factory gates and your suspicions are confirmed. Another notice. This one is newer, cleaner, even more dramatic in its red ink. Factory closed for maintenance and restructuring. Reopening Monday with modified hours. New hiring requirements will be announced. Below it, smaller text. Anyone found damaging equipment or inciting disruption will be reported to authorities. There's a long silence as everyone reads. Then the whispers start. What does that mean? Are they hiring new kids? Are we fired? Wait, modified hours? Does that mean less? No one knows. That's the point. You spot Theo across the courtyard, leaning against the wall like he's just waiting for someone to throw a punch so he can punch back harder. George is beside him, arms crossed, looking pleased but confused. They blinked first, Theo says when you walk over. That's something. You nod slowly. But they're not saying why. Of course not. They'd rather say the place needs repairs than admit kids got organised. George snorts. We broke the looms with friendship. Theo doesn't smile, just scans the crowd, eyes sharp. We need to be ready. If they change the rules, we change with them. No going back. You feel it too. That precarious weight. The tightrope between victory and punishment. You walked off the job yesterday, but today, you're still poor, still tired, still standing in front of a locked door, hoping the people who control your life are afraid enough to change, but not petty enough to replace you. Back home, the streets are buzzing, not in the usual desperate way, but with something bordering on excitement. Old women selling newspapers are shouting about child uprisings and factory shutdowns. You see a few headlines. Young workers stop the looms. Mill chaos, children walk out. Is this the end of the old order? One paper has a crude drawing of a kid standing on top of a loom with a protest sign that reads, "We bleed so you can wear hats." Not exactly accurate, but you admire the drama. You and your sister return home without a clear plan. The afternoon stretches long. Your brother gets into a fight over coal scraps. The baby screams. Your mum spends 2 hours writing a list of debts on the wall, then just stares at it like it's some kind of ancient curse. By sunset, you're lying on your mattress again, staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out what Monday might look like. If the factory reopens, if you're rehired, if modified hours means 10 instead of 14 or just 10 at twice the speed. There's a knock at the door. You jump. Your sister's already halfway across the room, opening it. It's Theo. He looks different in the light. Younger, less made of knives. We're having a meeting tomorrow, he says. Out by the canal, pass it on. He leaves before you can ask what it's about. You close the door slowly, feeling like you just got handed another piece to a puzzle you don't have the picture for. That night, you finally sleep. Not because you're not afraid, but because exhaustion and curiosity have fused together into something heavier than your fear. The next day you head to the canal. It's quieter there. Mist rising from the water, early morning light bouncing off oily ripples. About 30 kids are already gathered. Some sitting on crates, some just standing, arms crossed, eyes scanning. Theo's in the middle. Here's what we know, he says. They're reopening. They don't want more trouble, but they will try to divide us. He paces slowly. They'll offer some of us raises, some of us fewer hours, some nothing. They'll hope we turn on each other, compete, break the chain. You glance at George. He nods once. Quiet agreement. Theo stops walking. So we stay united. If one gets less, we all ask why. If one gets more, they share it. If they try to replace us, we teach the new ones what we've learned. No bosses, just each other. That idea, you realise, is more terrifying than the strike. Because it means not just standing up once, it means building something, holding the line, trusting people in a world that never gave you a reason to. But it also means not being alone anymore. Someone raises a hand. What if they come for us? Theo doesn't flinch. Then we do it again, louder. That night your mum tucks the baby into bed and sighs. They say the mill's offering parents money to send more kids in, she says softly. You hear that? You nod. I did. She looks at you for a long time. Then, you planning on going back? You meet her gaze. Only if they treat us right. She doesn't say anything, doesn't argue, just stares at the fire, the light flickering across her tired face. Your sister leans against your arm, half asleep. You think it'll work, she mumbles. You look out the window, the sky's foggy, the future is unclear. But you say, it already did. Monday. You walk to the factory in near silence, boots thudding against the stone like little warning drums. Your sister is with you, as usual, scarf wrapped tightly around her nose. She's not talking. Just breathing carefully, eyes fixed on the road ahead. You pass the gin hall, the canal bridge, the square where the fruit sellers are always lying about how fresh everything is. It all feels the same, and yet not. There's this strange, invisible shift in the air now. Not exactly tension. More like the cautious pause after a fire has burned out, when everyone's wondering if the embers are really dead or just pretending. At the mill gates you pause. The notice is gone. Replaced with two men standing beside a small wooden table and a ledger. They're checking names, rehiring. A small line of kids waits, fidgeting, trying not to look nervous. Some are wearing their best clothes, which still means ragged coats and patched trousers, but at least they've been beaten clean. When it's your turn, one of the men squints at you. Name? You give it. He flips through the ledger, licking his finger like that somehow helps. Looms, right? Yeah. He looks you up and down. You part of the ones who stopped. You glance at your sister, then you look back. I am. He studies you a moment longer, like he's deciding whether to scold you or give you a medal. Finally, we've got spots. You're on a new line. Modified hours, start at 7, end at 5. No docked pay for breaks. Machines have guards now. Don't touch them. You blink. That's 10 hours. With breaks. You nod, trying not to let your shock turn into a visible emotion. Wouldn't want to give them the satisfaction. The man waves you through. Your sister gets the same treatment, though her inspector gives a little frown and mutters something about children getting clever these days. You'd be flattered if it weren't so patronising. Inside the factory, everything looks mostly the same. Same metal guts, same oil stains, same smell of heat and metal and old wood. But the air feels lighter. Maybe it's the new fan someone's installed, actual ventilation. Or maybe it's the absence of the constant threat of Mr. Clench's cane. He's nowhere to be seen this morning. Instead, you're greeted by a new face, a supervisor you don't recognise, younger, with less of a moustache and more of a I went to school vibe. He nods at you, doesn't yell. You almost miss the yelling. Almost. Your loom has a new part bolted onto the front, a thin metal guard. You run your fingers along it, wondering how much blood could have been saved if they'd just added this months ago. Machines purr to life around you, not roar, purr. It's still loud, but less so, like someone finally decided to oil the hinges on the Devil's Gate. Then comes the weirdest part, the light. They've added more gas lamps. You can actually see your hands now. The threads aren't just vague lines of hope and dust. You can spot the fibres, the tension, the flaws before they snap. Across the floor, George catches your eye and raises an eyebrow. You nod. Theo's not here. You heard he's helping organise another mill. Word's spreading. They're calling it the children's stoppage. Newspapers are writing about it like you all carried pitchforks and sang protest songs. You didn't. You just didn't work. Turns out that was enough. You fall into rhythm, but it's slower now, safer. There are actual breaks. 50 minutes at 10 a.m, a full hour at lunch, and another 15 in the afternoon. You sit on a real bench for the first time and don't have to pretend it's part of your shift. Your sister eats a whole potato. A whole potato. Not a slice, not a crust. A full, round, warm, real potato. She stares at it for a moment before biting in like she thinks it might explode. And now a historical twist for you. In the years following early labour movements like this one, many factories began installing what they called moral improvements. Better lighting, cleaner facilities, safety features. Not necessarily because they cared, but because they realised fewer injuries meant fewer interruptions. Also, there was pressure from reformers, churches, and public health officials who were tired of stepping over dead children in alleyways. Whether it came from compassion or calculation is still debated. Maybe it was both, or maybe it was just too hard to ignore the evidence once it had names and faces and newspaper ink. Back to your loom, back to thread. But this time your hands aren't shaking from exhaustion. Not as much anyway. By the end of the day you're still tired but not destroyed. You walk home instead of dragging yourself. You can feel your fingers. You don't cough up dust. At home your mum meets you at the door. You're early, she says. You nod. New hours. She stares at you. Did they cut your pay? You hold up your coin pouch. Still thin, but not thinner. She nods once, then sits down heavily in the chair by the fire. Huh. Your brother's home too, covered in coal dust. He says nothing but gives you a strange sort of half nod, like he's finally stopped thinking of you as the soft one. The baby cries. Your mum picks her up without comment. Your sister is already asleep. You lie on your back, hands behind your head, staring at the ceiling, which now has a new crack running diagonally like it's winking at you. And that's when it happens. You laugh. Not a big one, not a wild one, just a quiet, stunned little laugh. Because for the first time in a long time, you didn't suffer to survive the day, you lived it. And tomorrow, you'll do it again. And maybe you'll even do a little more. You thought the strike would be the climax, the big moment, the final boss fight where the scrappy underdogs win, credits roll, and everyone goes home with cleaner clothes and better bread. Turns out revolution is not a one-day event, as it's a grind, just like everything else. Monday was smooth, suspiciously smooth. New hours, cleaner air, no yelling, no accidents. Like the factory was trying to impress a judge in a competition it forgot it entered. But now it's Thursday, and that shiny, fresh coat of paint feeling is starting to peel. It starts small, missing tools, thread not restocked. One of the new floor sweepers, barely 8 years old, gets smacked in the back of the head by an overseer when no one's looking. You see it. He sees you see it. But neither of you say a word. The machines are quieter, yes. The brakes are real. But the old habits, still lurking under the surface like rats waiting for the lights to go out. Mr. Clench is back. He returns on Wednesday, walking onto the floor like a ghost who's mad someone's been sitting in his favourite chair. His voice is lower than before, like he's been told to rein it in. But the glare, still fully weaponised. He doesn't yell. He doesn't have to. He just watches. You can feel it on the back of your neck like a warm, itchy scarf made of judgment. On Thursday morning, he walks past your loom, stops and says, "Glad to see you're working again." You nod, hands moving quickly. "Yes, sir." He leans closer. "Would be a shame if that changed." And then he walks away. "So, yeah, there's that." George corners you at break, cheeks flushed, eyes darting. "He's picking people off," he whispers, one by one, making them nervous, trying to get them to quit. You nod. "I know. He thinks if we're not fired, we'll just leave, or break under pressure." George looks at the potato in his hand like it personally betrayed him. "You think Theo knew this would happen?" "Probably. That's the truth. Theo may be young, but he's got that weary look of someone who's already made peace with a lot of unpleasant realities. He knew this wasn't going to be clean, just better. Not easy, just worth it. Still, that doesn't make it easier to deal with. Later that day, one of the older boys, Owen, gets pulled into the manager's office. He's in there for half an hour. When he comes back, he doesn't say anything, just picks up his coat and leaves. You never see him again. Whispers say he got offered a transfer, higher pay, quieter factory, no union talk allowed. No one can prove it. But the next day, another kid's gone, and the day after that, a girl from the dye house. Pick off the edges, and the centre falls apart. Or that's the plan. You try to hold the line. At lunch, the knot of you still gathers behind the warehouse. Theo's people, George, Mags, Elsie, even your sister, though she mostly just listens, chewing her bread like it's the only thing keeping her from launching into a speech. "They're testing us," Mags says, "seeing how far they can push before we push back." You nod. "But if we push back too soon, we lose what we gained," George finishes, like the whole thing never happened. So you wait. You strategize. You watch. Now for a fringe fact, because it's never not time for a bit of unsettling history. Some Victorian factories didn't just push back against strikes. They preemptively hired children from orphanages and poorhouses, kids with no families, no homes, and no one to report abuse to. These free labourers were easy to control. If they disappeared, no one asked questions. Some places even increased child hiring after reforms, just to avoid dealing with workers who might get ideas. That's the worry now, isn't it? You and your crew got ideas, and that makes you dangerous. By the end of the week, you've seen enough warning signs to know things are shifting again. Not back to how they were, but not forward either. Somewhere crooked in between. On Saturday, during your morning shift, the power belt on one of the spinning machines starts making a strange sound. A high whine, then a stutter. You've heard this noise before. You remember what happened to Tom. You tell the overseer. He shrugs, says, "We'll fix it after lunch." You stare at him. "That machine's going to snap." He frowns. "I said after lunch." You glance at your sister, working one station over. She's close enough that if that belt goes, she'll be right in the danger zone. You look back at the machine. Then you do something dangerous. You pull the red cord that cuts the power to that section. It jerks to a halt. Silence. The overseer turns, stunned. "What do you think you're doing?" You meet his eyes. Saving someone's life. There's a pause. One of those long, sticky pauses where no one knows if they're about to witness a miracle or a disaster. Then someone claps. One clap, then two. Soon the whole row is clapping. Not cheering, not smiling, just clapping. Slow. Loud. United. The overseer says nothing. Later, Mr. Clench glares at you from across the floor like he's trying to catch your clothes on fire with his eyes. But the machine stays off. A mechanic comes to fix it, and no one gets hurt. After the shift, George slaps you on the back hard enough to make you stumble. "You might get fired for that," he says, grinning. "Maybe," you reply, "but not for nothing." That night, your sister pulls your sleeve as you're getting ready for bed. "Why'd you do it?" she asks. "The power cord thing." You shrug. "Because I've seen what happens when no one does." She nods, thoughtful, then adds, "You shouldn't have to be the one." You look at her. "I wasn't. We all were." She smiles, small, crooked, tired, but real. You lie back, arms behind your head again, staring at that same crack on the ceiling. It's grown a little longer this week, like the house is stretching or splitting. And maybe that's what this whole thing is. A crack in something old, a split in something rotten. Not enough to bring the building down, but enough to let light in. It's payday, which sounds nice on paper. Payday has that solid, comforting ring to it, like something clean and final. A reward. A fair exchange for days of your life scraped off and fed into a machine. But of course, this is Victorian payday, so what you actually get is a cruel little joke. You and the others gather in a line that snakes around the office like a bored snake. Everyone fidgets, adjusting scarves and wiping grease off their hands so they don't smear it across the precious paybook. There's a new clerk behind the desk, a man with a moustache so thin it looks like he shaved a ferret and glued the results to his upper lip. He calls your name. You step up. He doesn't look at you. Just counts out a stack of coins into your calloused hand and writes something in his ledger. No receipt, no smile, just the clink of metal and the heavy feeling of having been weighed and measured in shillings and pence. You stare down at the pile in your palm and it's light, lighter than it should be. You do the math in your head, even though math has never been your strong suit. You've done 48 hours this week. You're due at least. I got docked, you say quietly. The clerk sighs like this conversation is already too much work. Says here you stopped the machine on Thursday. You nod. It was broken, unsafe. Still stopped it. Non-scheduled halt. 2p deduction. You stare at him. I stopped someone getting hurt. He shrugs. Doesn't say that. Behind you, George mutters something under his breath that rhymes with pluck hisses, and you elbow him to shut up. No need to add public profanity to your growing resume of reasons for deductions. You take the coins and move on. And just like that, your pay for the week, your food, your rent, your single ounce of independence has been nicked down by 2 pennies because you did the right thing. Welcome to capitalism, kids. Your sister's deduction is smaller. Apparently someone accused her of talking too much during shifts, which is hilarious, because she barely says anything unless it's about potatoes or possibly mice. But there's no arguing with the ledger. The ledger is sacred. The ledger is law. You regroup with the others behind the warehouse at lunch, coins in hand, everyone comparing how badly they got sliced. They shaved off 3p for thread wastage, Mag says, holding out her tiny purse, even though I literally don't control the thread. They said I miscounted bobbins, says a boy who you're pretty sure can't count past 10. They said my face was disrespectful, George adds flatly, which is fair, honestly. Everyone laughs a little, the kind of laugh you only hear in places where crying would be worse. Then comes the bigger news. Some workers got their pay not in coins, but in tokens. Paper slips, not money, just credits. You can only spend them at the company shop, Elsie explains, holding one up like it's diseased. And the prices there are worse than the market. It's a scam. She's not wrong. That shop, neatly built onto the side of the factory, is full of overpriced stale food and threadbare clothes marked up like they were woven by the Queen herself. The meat has a suspicious tint. The bread is harder than your boots. And if your wages are in tokens, well, what else can you do? Here's your fun, rage-inducing historical fact of the day. The truck system, as it was called, let factory owners pay workers in goods or credits instead of actual money. It was common in mining towns and industrial centres where employers also owned the housing, stores, and just about everything else. You couldn't leave, you couldn't save, you were paid in promises and charged in reality. There were laws against it, eventually. But enforcement? Spotty. And factory owners always found a way to make the math work in their favour. Theo warned you about this, back when you first started talking about striking. He said they'd try to claw back every inch you gained. You'll win a battle, he said, and they'll invent new weapons, every time. Now you see what he meant. You make it home with your reduced pay and hand it to your mum. She counts it, Doesn't comment on the amount, just nods and folds it into a tin under the floorboard. Then she writes, "Milk?" on the wall in chalk and stares at it like it owes her money. Later you sit with your sister near the fire, both of you gnawing on potatoes so small they should be called patatlings. She finally says it. "I hate this." You nod. "Me too." Feels like they're trying to wear us down. They are. She looks at you, eyes sharper than they should be for someone her age. "What do we do?" You stare at the fire for a while. "Same as before," you say. "We don't give up." She doesn't smile, doesn't nod. But she reaches into her coat pocket and pulls out a tiny paper with the coiled thread symbol on it. She hasn't thrown it away. Later that night, George sneaks over with a half loaf of proper bread. "From the Union box," he says. "They've started one. Not official, but it's a start." You take the bread, break off a piece and pass it to your sister before you eat your own. "We've got to do something," George mutters. "They're going to take it all back if we let them." "Let them, you say? You think we've let them do anything?" He chuckles. "Point taken." You lie awake again that night, staring at the ceiling crack that's now shaped like a lightning bolt. You don't feel brave anymore, just tired and stubborn. But sometimes stubborn is all you need. You think about the 2 pence they took, and you decide you'll get it back, all of it. You learn fast that wages is just another word for disappointment, monetized. The 2 pence they docked from your pay last week. You'll feel it all month. It means one less piece of bread. It means your mum can't buy kindling and has to burn rolled up scraps of newspaper instead. It means the baby gets watered down milk, again, and your sister coughs more because the room's too cold at night. 2 pence. One decision to stop a machine, that's all it takes. And now they've added a new twist. Delays. Monday morning, you show up at the mill only to be told there's no work today. "Machine maintenance," says one of the floor supervisors, reading from a scrap of paper like he didn't even bother to understand it himself. "Come back tomorrow. No pay for today, obviously." "Obviously." You stare at him. "We're ready to work." He shrugs. "Machines aren't." You and the others gather outside, uncertain. It's not just your row. They've sent home half the spinning crew and a chunk of the weavers. Mag squints at the building. "They're cutting hours," she says flatly, "but not the way we asked." George folds his arms. "You think it's retaliation?" "I think it's strategic incompetence," she mutters. "They can't openly punish us, so they're doing it by technicalities." The word tastes sour, even if it sounds clever. You walk home in silence. All that noise inside your head and no outlet for it. You can't fight a broken machine. You can't strike against a power outage. You can't do anything when the thing punishing you doesn't have a face. Your mum takes the news without blinking. "We'll stretch what we have," she says. "We always do." That's the thing about poor people. You become gymnasts of survival, always stretching, always bending, but never really growing. And when the factory does call you back the next day, it's under new terms, fewer hours. Still 10-hour shifts, but now you're scheduled for only 4 days a week instead of 6. At first that sounds good. You think, maybe I'll rest, maybe I'll sleep, but then payday comes again. And it hits you, less work means less pay. And no, they haven't raised your daily rate, why would they? You get your little pile of coins, this time even lighter. And when you ask why, the clerk says, "We prorated your weekly wage. It's standard policy." "Standard policy?" George mutters behind you. Sounds like a fancy way of saying, "Enjoy your starvation." You don't laugh, not even a little. That night there's nothing for supper except porridge so thin you can see the bottom of the bowl. Your sister gulps hers like it's soup, but then stares at the empty space where the bread used to be. You lean back against the wall. "If they cut us again, we won't make rent." Your mum doesn't say anything. She's got that look again, like she's staring not just through the wall, but through time itself. You shift your eyes to your sister. "You're coughing again." "I'm fine," she lies, voice raspy. "You know what that cough means. Everyone does. The dust is winning." Time for another historical fun fact you didn't ask for but definitely need. The average factory worker's life expectancy in the mid-1800s was shockingly low. Many died before 30. Lung disease was a favourite. Tuberculosis was common. Pneumonia, practically a rite of passage. Scholars have long debated whether this brutal life was a necessary phase of progress or just avoidable cruelty disguised as inevitability. The truth? A little from column A, a little from column B. But for people like you, right now, those debates don't mean much. You're not a statistic. You're a kid watching your sister wheeze in the corner while trying to decide if you can stretch 2 coins into food and firewood. You meet up with the others later that week, back behind the warehouse. The group's thinner now, a few have left, took jobs in neighbouring mills that offered a little more, but with no guarantee they'll last. Others are just missing, gone without a word. "We need to do something," Mag says, voice sharp. "Something bigger." "Another strike," someone suggests. Theo, who's reappeared like a ghost returning to check on his haunted house, shakes his head. They've adapted. One strike. They'll survive it. Even expect it. George spits into the dirt. "What do you suggest? We burn it down?" "No," Theo says. "We go legal." Everyone stares at him like he's lost his last working brain cell. "Legal, you say?" He nods. "There's a meeting happening. Across town. Union reps. They're not official. Not yet. But they're organising. Adults, too. They're trying to get a law passed to ban child labour under 12. "Under 12? Your sister says from the edge. "I'm 10. "That's the point," Theo says. "They want you in school, not under a loom." George snorts. "We can't afford school." "I know," Theo says evenly. "But that doesn't mean we shouldn't try. If we can link with them, get the story out, let people see us, hear from the kids, we might not need to strike again. You're sceptical. People have seen you. They've stepped over you, walked past your coughing sister and your bruised arms and your missing meals. They've seen and kept walking. But still, it's a step." Theo pulls something from his coat. A pamphlet. Smudged ink. Hand-printed. On the cover is a drawing of a child hunched beside a machine, back bent, eyes blank. Underneath, it reads, "You wear what we suffer to make." He hands it to you. Take it. Pass it. Read it. You tuck it into your coat, half expecting it to burst into flames on contact. Words like this, truthful words, feel dangerous. That night, you and your sister read it by candlelight. It talks about wages, about safety, about how the law isn't there to protect you because no one's made it yet. It talks about you. And suddenly you don't feel like a ghost anymore. You feel like a page in a story someone might actually finish. Sleep is a joke now. Your brain doesn't turn off anymore. It just switches between work thoughts and worse work thoughts, with the occasional panic spike about food or rent, or the sharpness of that cough your sister keeps pretending she doesn't have. She curled up beside you again tonight, wheezing quietly. The blanket's thin, and the cold presses through the walls like it pays rent. You'd offer her your coat, but you already did. It's tucked under her, rolled into a miserable pillow. You stare at the ceiling. The lightning bolt crack looks bigger again. Either it's growing, or your imagination is. No whistle in the morning. You sit up quickly, half hoping the factory's closed again. Not because you want time off, but because maybe someone finally shut it down for good. Maybe the pamphlet worked. Maybe the inspectors are back, this time with clipboards and consequences. But no, the factory's open. You just beat the whistle this morning. The street is quiet, damp. The smell of coal smoke hangs low in the fog like a curtain of bad dreams. You see a cart with frozen eels and a woman yelling about turnips no one's buying. You pass 3 kids coughing into scarves, faces grey as dishwater. Everyone looks thinner, even the factory itself. Inside, the floor feels half empty. Machines are running, but not all of them. Your row's intact, but the weavers on the south end are gone, sent home indefinitely. Reallocation of resources, someone says, which sounds very official for they're getting canned. You take your place and start the thread. Your fingers feel slow. The cold makes the thread stiff and your hands stiffer. You blink hard, fighting the fuzz creeping into your head. Then you hear the cough. It's your sister, louder now, rougher, like someone's raking a fork through her lungs. You glance over. She's pale, eyes glassy. She's still working, because of course she is, but her shoulders are slumped, and her movements are jerky. You step away from your machine risky and kneel beside her. "You okay?" you ask. She shrugs, which is code for no. You touch her forehead. It's burning. You look up and meet George's eyes across the floor. He sees it too. He walks over casually, wiping his hands on his shirt. "She can't stay," you whisper. George nods. "I'll cover for you." You help your sister up slowly, carefully. Her legs buckle. She leans against you, mumbling something about thread counts and spools. Her brain's fogged, her breath's ragged. You half carry her to the back door, past the bins of broken parts and the oily barrels no one ever questions. A foreman spots you, but doesn't stop you. Maybe he doesn't want sick kids in his clean numbers. At home, your mum takes one look and nods. "Put her by the fire. I'll get something hot." You do. You sit with her. Hold her hand. She drifts in and out of sleep, coughing the whole time. That's when you realise you're not going back in today. You've crossed a line. One of those invisible ones that only matter to people with ledgers and sticks. You left mid-shift. That's as good as quitting. Or worse, resisting. Still, you don't move. You sit by your sister until the fire goes out and the chill creeps back in. At sunset, your mum wraps her in another blanket and gives you a look. It says thank you, and you're in trouble at the same time. The next day you do go in. You brace for it. The yelling, the deduction, the public shaming. But it never comes. Instead, you find a note on your station. "Next time, get permission before leaving the floor. Consider this a warning." No name, just ink and silence. You scan the floor. Mr. Clench isn't there, and neither is Theo. George walks up. "He's gone," he says. "Fired?" "Worse, blacklisted." "What for?" George shrugs. "Too many meetings, too many pamphlets, too many ideas." You fold the note into your pocket. You'd be more scared, but honestly, you're too tired for fear right now. The shift drags. Thread, feed, tie, repeat. Your fingers ache. Your back is screaming. You smell like grease and old sweat and damp wool. But you keep going. At lunch, Mags gives you a paper-wrapped bundle. "Union stew," she says. "It's mostly cabbage, but it's warm and it's free." "They're building something," she adds, "even without Theo." You nod, chewing slowly. "You in?" "Always." You take the rest home for your sister. She eats 2 bites and falls asleep with it in her lap. She mumbles something about a sewing needle and then snores like a tiny freight train. And you sit there beside her, wondering how long she can keep this up. How long can any of you keep this up? It's a question that Victorian kids ask silently every day, until they couldn't anymore. Here's your ugly historical nugget for tonight. Kids who couldn't work anymore weren't just a burden. They were disposable. If you got too sick, too slow, or too broken, you were sent home and replaced. Families sometimes hid their children's illnesses just to keep the paycheck coming. And those who died, usually buried in shared graves with no names, just statistics. Your sister isn't a statistic. You won't let her be. The next morning you bring her a spoonful of that stew, reheated and still somehow edible. "We're going to change things," you whisper. She blinks at you, eyes glassy but focused. "How?" "We already are." She falls back asleep before you can say more. But you're awake now, all the way awake. And the more they push, the more you're going to push back. Sunday used to be the closest thing you had to a break. Not rest. Let's not get ridiculous. But a pause. A crack in the wall. One day a week where you could almost pretend you weren't just another cog in someone else's fortune-making machine. But lately even Sundays turned bitter. This morning your mum's brushing your sister's hair in silence while the baby chews on a burnt crust. You're tying your boots. Same pair, same hole, same stupid nail Henry, who seems to be evolving into a full-blown demon, and wondering if it's worth going to church today. Because you know what's coming. Not salvation, not comfort, just shame in 3 parts and a closing hymn. Ready? Your mum asks, tying her scarf tightly under her chin. We'll sit near the back, like always. Maybe we should skip it, you mutter. She gives you a look. We can't. We need the priest's approval for the winter coal voucher. Right. God's warmth comes with paperwork, and so you go. The church is cold. Stone walls, creaky pews, a smell that's equal parts mildew and overly hopeful incense. Everyone's in their Sunday best, which is just their work clothes with the visible patches brushed off. You take a seat at the far end of a row, next to a boy who smells like lard and stress. The priest stands at the pulpit like he's afraid someone might interrupt him with a better idea. He adjusts his collar, opens his big leather-bound Bible and begins the sermon. It's about obedience. Of course it is. Children, obey your masters in all things, for this is well-pleasing unto the Lord, he says, voice echoing off the stone. You glance around. No one moves. No one looks up. Everyone's heard this before. He goes on about humility, about discipline, about the dangers of pride and rebellion, about how suffering is part of life, and how those who endure shall be rewarded in heaven. Your stomach twists. Because sure, fine, maybe heaven has clean socks and working lungs, but here on earth, you're coughing through 14-hour shifts and eating food that smells like regret. The priest never worked a loom. The priest never pulled his sister out of a factory with a fever and a cough that sounds like crushed paper. The priest lives in a nice house, with coal and lamb and probably butter. The sermon ends with a prayer for the continued stability of our blessed industries. You almost choke. Afterward, people file out quietly. Some drop coins into the collection plate. You notice they're mostly the ones who got paid in actual money this week. You walk outside, inhaling the cold air like it's cleaner than the sermon. Spoiler, it isn't. The fog is back, thick as ever, mixing with cold smoke until the sky looks like dirty dishwater. George finds you by the lamppost near the bakery. The scent of day-old rolls wafts through the door. Neither of you can afford one. Good service, he asks. Only if you're a factory owner. He nods. Mine said striking was a sin. Of course it is. So is asking for lunch. You both laugh, but it's sharp, brittle. Across the street, someone's nailed another pamphlet to a wall. You jog over and tear it down before it can be pulled down by someone less curious. This one's printed nicer. Proper ink, evenly spaced, no spelling mistakes. A sign that the movement's getting smarter. It reads, "We are not lazy. We are not lawless. We are tired, and we're awake. Meeting at St. Mary's basement. Wednesday evening, after bells. Food, shelter, strategy. Children welcome. Voices heard. Change begins. You show it to George. He whistles low. Underground meetings now. It says food. He taps the line that matters most. Voices heard. Your voice has been working overtime for everyone else. Maybe this time someone will actually listen. You spend the rest of Sunday doing small chores that feel too big. You fix a shoelace with twine. You help your mum hang clothes that won't dry in the damp. You sit with your sister and tell her the meeting's happening. And she says nothing, just squeezes your hand. Wednesday takes its sweet time arriving. The day at the factory is uneventful in the worst way. Mr. Clench is back to pacing. Overseers have started random spot checks, which mostly just mean they get to yell and call it inspection. One girl cries, a boy loses a button and gets told it's unprofessional. You don't speak, you don't blink, you do the job, you count the hours, you count the breaths between coughs. Then finally, the bells. St. Mary's is old. The basement smells like dirt and wax and the ghost of 100 rotted pews. But it's warm, it's full, More than 30 kids, a few older teens, even 2 mothers with babies strapped to their backs. A boy from a different mill in town, a boot polish factory, worse even than yours, stands near the front holding a paper in his hand and shaking slightly. Theo's there, so is Mags. George slides in beside you, eyes wide. This is bigger than I thought. A woman stands up front, mid-30s, sharp eyes, blouse with real buttons. She clears her throat and begins. This is not just about hours, or wages, or machines, she says. This is about value, about what we're worth, about what happens when people decide we're just tools. Everyone's still listening. We're not tools, she says. We're not numbers. We're not waiting for heaven to fix what earth keeps breaking. You feel something twist in your chest. You've never heard an adult talk like this. She lays out a plan, new petitions, new articles in the press, names of members of parliament who might support a ban on underage labour if they feel enough pressure. You can help, she says, by showing up, by telling your story, by being seen. She looks around the room, then she points. At you. What's your name? You freeze. Speak, she says gently. This is your place. You stand slowly, pulse in your throat. You feel everyone watching. My name's... You croak, then clear your throat. My name's... And then you say it. And then you speak. And for the first time since you walked into a factory, someone writes down your words like they matter. Your name hangs in the air like fog from the street lamps. Light but impossible to ignore. The woman at the front, the one in the buttoned blouse, nods as you finish speaking. She writes it down slowly in her notebook, like she's collecting something precious. A witness, a story, a truth. It's strange, this feeling. Like you exist, not just in a ledger or a body count or a pay stub, but in history. The basement meeting goes on. Others speak, kids mostly, and a few adults who've seen what the factories do to their children and are finally ready to say, no more. There's a teenage girl from the match factory down the road who's already lost 3 teeth to something called Fossy Jaw. Her voice is quiet, but she tells her story like it's the last thing she'll ever get to say. There's a collective ache in the room. Not pity, not sadness. More like rage that learned how to sit down and behave itself. You leave with a copy of the pamphlet and a half-stale roll someone shoved into your hand. Your sister's waiting at home, face pale and eyes watery, but still sitting up, still fighting. You give her the roll. She eats it like it's the best thing she's ever tasted. So, what happened? She asks between bites. We're being seen, you say, and then you whisper, and heard. The rest of the week moves strangely. The factory is cautious, not improved, not reformed, but definitely aware. Word is getting around. Papers are sniffing out the story. A man in a coat that doesn't fit lingers around the gates at lunch asking questions. Someone says he's from the Times. George nearly faints when he hears that. You think we're going to be in a newspaper? He asks, halfway between panic and pride. Maybe, you say. Depends if we're still alive by the time they print it. You're joking, sort of. Then comes Friday. A notice on the board. Everyone gathers around, squinting at the carefully lettered words. Red ink again, because everything serious apparently needs to look like a threat. Attention. All workers. Effective immediately. Shift hours will return to 5 days a week. Pay deductions will be reviewed for fairness. Complaints may be submitted anonymously in writing. Any further attempts to disrupt factory operations will result in dismissal. No one knows whether to cheer or panic. Did we win? Mags mutters. Half a win, says George. That's a winlet. But it is something. You look at the last line again. Any further attempts to disrupt. It's a warning. They're listening, but also sharpening their knives behind the curtain. You're being watched just as much as you're being heard. The following week things shift again. Subtle things. The overseers stop yelling quite as much. One even smiles. Not a full smile, more like a twitch that might have been a facial expression if you squint. But it's something. You see a younger girl get moved off the loom line and assigned to the thread room. Too small for heavy work, someone says. That never used to matter. You catch Mr. Clench reading a newspaper behind the main office window. He doesn't like what he's reading based on how many times he mutters under his breath. Later, George passes you a folded page ripped from a publication. It's got your quote on it. Not your name, but your words. The ones you said in that basement, about value, about not being tools. You don't know whether to be proud or afraid. Your sister reads it that night, eyes wide. That's you. I know. You're in print. You smile a little, then frown. Now we just have to survive it. Because here's the thing. When people like you get loud, the system doesn't always fold. Sometimes it snaps back harder. Which brings us to tonight's morbid but important historical fact. In the early waves of industrial reform, a lot of young workers were discouraged from organising by more than just docked pay. Threats, evictions, blacklists, beatings. In some places, police were called in to break up kid-led protests. In others, local leaders pretended the problem didn't exist. Progress was never just a straight line. It was a jagged staircase, and some of the steps were broken. On Thursday, a whisper goes around the factory. One of the union organisers, the woman from the basement, is being followed. No one knows by who. Some say it's factory men, some say hired thugs, some say the police. But someone's been spotted loitering near her door. A bottle was thrown at her window last night. Her name was scratched into a wall near the warehouse, with the word traitor next to it. You feel it in your bones. The tide is shifting again. But this time, you're not powerless. That evening, another meeting. Bigger now. Adults and kids. Faces you've never seen before. People from other factories. A butcher's apprentice. A coal girl. Even a printer's assistant who says they'll start sneaking reform pamphlets into their deliveries. And then someone new speaks. A man in a long coat, spectacles crooked on his nose with a voice like he's swallowed gravel. He introduces himself as a member of the Factory Reform Society, and when he says that Parliament is finally listening, finally truly listening, you could hear a pin drop on the damp stone floor. They want testimony, he says, real stories, from real workers. He looks at the kids in the room, directly at you. They want your voices, not your overseers, yours. Silence. Then someone steps forward, a small boy with a limp and 2 missing fingers. He starts talking, and then another, and then you, and as the man scribbles it all down, you realise history isn't made by speeches, it's made by kids in dim basements, with thread still stuck to their sleeves and soot under their fingernails, speaking out when they've got nothing left to lose. You never planned to become a public speaker. It's not exactly part of the child labourer survival kit, which, if it existed, would probably just be a crust of bread and a rolled-up lung. But here you are, standing in front of adults again, grown-ups in real boots and coats with working buttons. A few have notebooks. One has a pen tucked behind her ear like she's the editor of the world. This isn't the church basement anymore. This is a real room. Clean floors, no mildew, even tea on the table. Actual tea, not the leaf-flavoured puddle water your mum makes at home. The man from the Factory Reform Society gestures for you to begin. You clear your throat. It still feels strange. You're used to making noise in the clatter of the factory, not in quiet rooms where silence actually listens. I'm 11, you begin, voice steadier than you expected. Been working since I was 8. In the loom section. I've seen a boy lose half his hand. A girl, she didn't come back after the machine hit her face. I've seen kids cry and keep working because crying slows you down and slow gets you docked. A few people flinch. Someone scribbles notes. The tea steams politely in its cup. You keep going. You talk about the whistle that makes your stomach clench every morning, about the shoes that never dry, the coughs that don't go away, The burns, the punishments, the deductions, the long shifts where you don't remember your own name, just the sound of the machine and the ache behind your eyes. And you finish with this. I'm not asking for mercy. I'm asking for time, for life, for the chance to grow up without being crushed. You sit, and suddenly the room isn't quiet anymore. It's breathing. The next kid speaks, then another, then George, who stumbles over his words and calls the overseer a pig-faced tyrant, and the room laughs. And somehow that feels just as powerful as everything else. And that right there is how it starts. Not a revolution with fire and fists, but a slow, deliberate chisel against the stone wall of silence. By the end of the week, the Reformed Society has a stack of testimonials, real names, real stories, even a sketch artist who's drawn scenes based on your words, your sister asleep in a corner, a loom like a monster with metal teeth, a row of kids with bruises and blank stares. The paper runs one of the images, the country notices. You can feel it. Whispers in the street, new eyes at the gates, a constable hanging around not to arrest you but to watch the factory, overseers who hesitate now before raising their voices. One even apologizes when he knocks over a spool and nearly hits your foot. I didn't see you, he mutters. You nod, but in your head you think, you do now. Things at home shift too. The soup is thicker, the fire burns longer, your sister coughs less. She's still not strong enough to go back to work, and that's a good thing. You've all agreed she won't go back. Not now, not ever. Your mum's sceptical at first. We need the coins, she says. We'll make do, you reply, and when you hand over your full wages, no deductions this time, she hugs you tighter than she has in months. Then she hands you something folded in a scrap of cloth. It's a pair of gloves, not new, not even warm, but fingerless, patched, and yours. For winter, she says, so you don't come home frozen. You wear them every day like armour, and every time someone asks about the thread marks on your palms, you show them the gloves and say, still working, but not breaking. Let's pause here for a second and sprinkle in some real-world dirt. Children's testimonies did eventually reach Parliament. Reformers like Lord Shaftesbury pushed for investigations that brought these stories to light. Reports were published, graphic drawings, quotes from kids, medical examinations. Some people were horrified, others shrugged, but the facts were out there. And once a fact has a name and a face, it's harder to ignore. And that's where you are now, unignorable. A few days later, you're walking home when someone stops you. He's older, grey coat, soft hands. I read your story, he says, in the Herald. You spoke well. You nod, unsure if this is a compliment or a setup. He reaches into his coat and hands you a folded paper. Come to this meeting, he says. You'll want to be there. He leaves without another word. You unfold the paper. It's a formal notice. Committee on Child Labour Reform, public hearing. Date, Thursday. Location, Town Hall, Assembly Room. B. Witnesses invited to testify. Press encouraged to attend. You read it 3 times before the words fully land. You've been invited to speak to the people who write the rules. George nearly chokes on his bread when you show him. Mags just grins. Your sister beams. Are you going to wear your gloves? You are. You arrive at the hearing with your coat buttoned, your boots shined as best you can, and your testimony memorized like a prayer. The room is big, carpeted, full of people who've probably never missed a meal in their lives. But they listen. They listen. You speak again, louder this time, clearer, not because you're braver, but because now you know your voice carries. You've heard it ripple through newsprint and echo in basement meetings. You've seen it in people's faces, in your sister's recovery, in the way the factory flinches now when you speak. You leave the room to polite applause, and then days later the news hits. A new bill is being drafted. It won't fix everything, but it starts something. Children under 9, banned. Workday cap, 10 hours. Inspectors, authorised. And all over the city, kids are reading that news and whispering the same thing to each other. We did that. You go to work the next day like always, but the air is different, not cleaner, just lighter. And for the first time, you walk past the factory gates and think, this place doesn't own me, not anymore. You didn't get a medal, no parades, no statues, no golden threaded coat that announces this child challenged the system and won. What you did get was another workday, but that workday's different. You wake up before the whistle out of habit, but it doesn't make your stomach clench the way it used to. You pull on your patched clothes, lace your boots, and wrap your scarf around your neck with fingers that don't shake from cold or fear. Your sister's still sleeping, which is exactly what she should be doing. No more guilt about dragging her out the door before sunrise. No more watching her cough blood into a rag she tries to hide in her pocket. She's going to live, and not just survive. Live. You make your way through the streets, fog pressing in soft and grey. Your gloves, your mum's gloves, now your gloves, are already smudged with soot again, but you don't care. At the factory, the gate creaks open. The overseer nods at you, doesn't say a word, because now you're known. Maybe not by name, but as part of it. The change. Inside, the looms hum as usual. The air still tastes like boiled metal and dust, but the machines have guards. The children working them are older. And there's one more thing. There's space. Not physical, not in the aisles, but in the day. A kind of breathing room, the kind you fought for. And you notice something new. Laughter. Not a lot, not loud, but real. Someone makes a joke at break. Someone else hums a tune without getting shushed. No one's smiling through their teeth. They're just not breaking. It's almost unsettling. You sit at lunch with George and Mags and a boy from another section who swears he once saw a cat fall asleep on a running machine and walk away unharmed. You call him a liar. He says the cat's name was Lucky. You believe him less now. But you're laughing, and so is everyone else. And for the first time since the stoppage, it doesn't feel like pretending. After the shift, Mr. Clench pulls you aside. Not in a threatening way, not the old way. His cane's still there, but it stays pressed to the floor like it's lost its will to bite. You've caused a lot of trouble, he says quietly. You don't answer. But, he continues, maybe it was the kind we needed. You blink. He adjusts his collar. I've been with this factory 22 years. Thought I'd seen it all. Then you lot walk out and make half the country write letters to Parliament. Still silent. He looks at you, then at the machines. Don't stop pushing, he mutters, just don't get killed doing it. He walks off. You don't tell anyone what he said. Not because it's secret, because you're not sure you believe it happened. It's like hearing your chimney apologise for all the smoke. Later that week, the Reform Committee sends a message through the factory network. The bill passed its second reading. It's happening. You're standing outside on break, letting the pale sun warm your face when the news hits. The youngest workers, gone. Under nines banned outright. Inspectors come in soon. Owners, fined if they break the law. Hours, capped at 10. People don't cheer, they just nod. Because it's not over, but it's proof. And proof changes everything. Here's your twisty historical nugget for tonight. The 1833 Factory Act did ban children under 9 from working in textile factories and required 2 hours of education per day for kids under 13. Inspectors were appointed, though few at first. It wasn't perfect. Enforcement was weak. But it was the first major crack in the system, the first step toward labour laws that actually gave a damn about the people doing the labour. You, yes you, helped lay that first stone. One evening you return home to find your mum with a piece of chalk writing on the wall again. But this time, it's not a list of what you can't afford. It's a schedule. School, she says, pointing to your sister's name, and you blink. School? The church school, she nods. One of the reform ladies, Miss Clara, the one with the feathered hat, she got her a place. Only 2 hours a day, but still. They've started teaching the mill kids. Your sister practically glows. Reading? She asks. Real reading? Real as it gets, your mum says. Books, stories, arithmetic. Your sister looks at you like you personally invented the alphabet. I'm going to read everything, she says. You grin. Start with labels. Make sure you don't eat anything deadly. You all laugh. It's a sound that fills the whole room, up into the rafters and out through the cracked window. It rolls down the street and into the factory yards. It's not just joy, it's defiance. A life is returning to you, slowly, in crooked, limping pieces, but it's coming. You still work, still wake before dawn, still eat more potatoes than is strictly reasonable. But now there's tomorrow, not just another version of today, but something new. And maybe that's the biggest win of all. Not laws, not speeches, but possibility. That strange, flickering thing that keeps people breathing when the air is full of soot and their pockets are full of holes. Possibility means your sister will grow up knowing what books feel like in her hands, not just thread and splinters. Possibility means you might leave the factory someday. Not in a box, not in debt, but on your own terms. Possibility means you change something. You go to sleep that night listening to your sister whisper her alphabet under her breath, and you think, maybe I'll learn too. You're not used to being hopeful. It's a weird fluttery feeling, like someone poured tea into your chest and it hasn't quite settled. It makes you cautious, like touching a hot stovetop and wondering if it'll burn you this time. But it's still there. Every morning when your sister leaves for the church school in her patched coat and boots that almost fit, she turns around to wave at you like she's off to meet the Queen, and every time, you wave back like you don't feel like crying a little. That's new. Hope. You still work, though. Of course you do. Just because laws change doesn't mean you get to sit around sipping lemonade. You're back on the looms this week. Same machines, same grease-streaked wood, but now with slightly better lighting and slightly fewer injuries. There's even a new kid. A boy who says his name is Ned, but whose real name is probably something longer and less cool. He's 13, maybe, and already taller than you. You're showing him how not to slice his hand open when George leans over and mutters, "You've gone soft." You raise an eyebrow. Says the guy who cried over a muffin last week. It was warm, he crosses his arms. I will not apologise for that muffin. Ned looks confused, like he walked into the middle of a long, strange conversation. Which, to be fair, he has. Still, you help him thread the bobbins and explain why we do not lean too close to the shuttle. Your scars tell the story for you. Later that day, the factory manager, yes, the manager, not just some clipboard-toting lackey, gathers the younger workers near the front. There's a speech. It's short and weirdly polite. Due to recent legislation, he says, and the spotlight on our industry, we will be making some changes. Education will be offered 2 hours a day for all workers under 13, starting next week. Mandatory. You look around. Blank faces. George leans over. Mandatory like, or else. Mandatory like, or else they get fined, you whisper. You see it click for him. It's not a kindness, it's compliance. But hey, you'll take it. Do we still get paid? Someone asks. The manager sighs. Yes, but adjusted slightly. Ah, there it is. Always a catch. Still, it's school. During work hours. That's something you didn't dare dream of before. You remember that word from the basement meeting? We are not waiting for heaven to fix what Earth keeps breaking. Now Earth is at least patching a few cracks. Later during break, Mag shows you her notebook. It's just a few pages stitched together from scraps, but it's covered in writing. Real writing. Her own. I'm learning, she says, voice low. At night, from my sister. She teaches the ones who never went to school. You flip through the pages. There are words, actual words, and a few drawings. One of them looks suspiciously like Mr. Clench falling into a vat of dye. You've got talent, you say, she smirks. I've got rage. Same thing. And then something even stranger happens. Mr. Clench walks past and doesn't yell at anyone. He doesn't even scowl. He just walks and nods. It's the weirdest thing you've ever seen. Like seeing a wolf apologize for eating your sheep. You don't trust it, but you note it. Meanwhile, the pamphlets are still showing up. Now they're tidier, better printed. There's even one with your quote on the front page this time. You've gone from nameless machine fodder to someone with a voice. Here's tonight's fact drop, and it's a satisfying one. After the 1833 Factory Act passed in Britain, the groundwork was laid for future reforms. More acts followed, each tightening the age limits, improving inspections, mandating education. Bit by bit, the system bent. It didn't break all at once, but it bent. Why? Because people, kids like you, kept showing up, kept telling the truth, kept pushing, not loud, not violent, just relentless. That's what you've become. One late evening, the Reform Society hosts another meeting. Bigger room this time. Windows, chairs, food that smells like someone cooked it on purpose. There's talk of expanding the effort, reaching other cities, linking factories across the region, and then a woman stands up, one of the new organisers. She asks a question. Would any of the younger workers like to help write the next pamphlet? You freeze. You've never written anything more than your name and a tally of thread counts. But Mags elbows you, and your sister, standing near the tea tray in her school scarf, says quietly, "You should." You raise your hand. A week later, you're writing your first piece. It's simple. Just a story about your first shift. Your second. The day you learned what happens when you bleed on a machine. The day you learned how to hide it. The day you learned how to speak. You don't try to make it fancy. You just make it true. It goes into the next pamphlet. You don't sign it. You don't have to. When people read it, you hear whispers. That's the kid, the one who stopped the loom. You smile to yourself. Not pride. Just recognition. You're still working, still tired, still hungry more often than not. But you're more than that now. You're not just in history. You're helping write it. Winter rolls in like a drunk uncle, loud, rude, and impossible to ignore. The fog turns heavier, thicker, like soup someone forgot to season. The streets freeze at night, slick as glass, and the wind has hands now, cold, clever fingers that slip through your coat, up your sleeves, into your bones. Still, you keep walking to the factory. Because even with the new laws, the looms don't run themselves. Machines still need feeding, bobbins still need tying, and even reformers need rent money. But this winter hits harder. You're older now, or maybe just worn thin. You feel the cold deeper. You feel everything deeper. Your sister comes back from school one afternoon grinning like she's swallowed the sun. She waves a grubby paper in your face. It's a reading award. First in her class, for real. The kind of paper you could frame if you weren't using the frame to hold up a broken window pane. She tells you she read aloud in front of the whole room. She says she wants to be a teacher. You want to cry and laugh and throw a chair through a wall all at once, because here's a girl who used to cough blood beside a spinning frame, and now she's talking about future plans like it's something she's allowed to have. Hope, it turns out, is more contagious than dust. At the factory, changes keep creeping in like polite little miracles. The new inspector shows up once a week now. His name is Mr. Dovey. He has round spectacles and the kind of face that makes you feel like you should apologise for existing, even though he's technically on your side. Still, he does his job. He checks machines, interviews workers, writes things in a thick book with a real leather cover. Once, he pulls you aside and asks questions about how long your breaks are and whether the noise gives you headaches. You blink. You care about headaches? He nods very seriously. Noise-induced ailments are medically recognised now. You're not sure what ailments means, but if it means, my skull buzzes when I blink, then yeah, you've got one. Even Mr. Clench pretends to be civil when Dovey's around. No cane slapping, no shouting, just tight smiles and twitchy glances, like he knows he's being watched and doesn't like how it feels. Honestly, Good. George says it best. Watching the overseer squirm is the only warm thing this winter. Mags, meanwhile, has taken up writing protest songs. Yes, songs. She scribbles verses in her thread book, hummable little tunes about bobbins and bad bosses and the stink of the dye room. She sings them during lunch, loudly. She claims she's starting a movement. I call it grumble folk, she says, with a completely straight face. You snort so hard you almost drop your potato. But the truth is, even dumb jokes like that mean something now. A year ago, you wouldn't have dared joke, wouldn't have had the energy to joke. Now, there's room for music, even bad music, especially bad music. But not everyone's thrilled. The factory owners, surprise, surprise, are grumbling themselves. They've started posting economy notices on the boards. One says wages might be adjusted due to reduced efficiency. Another claims recent inspections are damaging morale. George laughs at that one for a solid minute. Our morale? Damaged? He cackles. No, sir, we were thriving when children were losing thumbs in the warp rollers. But underneath the sarcasm, you're all watching closely. Because the owners aren't giving up. They're just changing tactics. That's always been their strength. They adapt faster than rats. One day, a rumour spreads like fire layoffs. Selective ones, not mass firings. Just quiet removals. A kid here, a teen there. Always someone who talked too much, asked too many questions, wrote a letter, signed a petition, sang a song. You feel it in your gut. The pushback is beginning. Theo reappears around then, slipping into a meeting like he never left. Taller now, thinner, sharper. He nods at you and says, "Still alive?" "Barely," you reply. "You?" "Angrier than ever." He brings word from other towns, Manchester, Leeds, Birmingham. The factory owners are organising, trying to undo parts of the act, claiming it's ruining industry, killing profit, and they're not wrong, about the profit part at least. Turns out treating children like humans is less profitable. Who knew? But Parliament is still watching. The press is still sniffing. Reformers are still marching. And kids like you, you're still here. You've become living proof. Theo pulls out a printed flyer from his coat and slaps it on the table. National March for Worker Rights. March 3rd, London. You blink. A march? With kids? He nods. With everyone. You'll be seen, heard, counted. You stare at the flyer. March 3rd. It's a month away. A whole month to survive. To hold on. To stay in the fight. You fold the flyer and tuck it into your coat. You don't say anything. But that night you show it to your mum. She frowns at it and then nods. You'll need a warmer coat. You've never felt more love than in that one sentence. By the next week the wind's worse. The snow is freezing sideways. Your boots squish from melted slush. And your fingertips go numb before the midday bell. You wrap your scarf twice and dig deeper into your coat, but it doesn't help. Still you walk. Still you show up. Still you endure. Because March 3rd is coming, and this time you won't be marching alone. You count the days to march like you used to count bobbins. Carefully, methodically, with a sinking suspicion that if you mess up, someone might lose a finger. But these days, you're not just counting shifts and thread. You're counting something bigger. Each day is one step closer to the march. You can feel it building in the streets. People are whispering about it at break. Meetings are popping up in new places. School basements, chapels, even the back room of the pie shop where the owner lets you huddle around the oven as long as you don't touch anything. You're starting to see chalk symbols drawn on alley walls, barely noticeable if you're not looking. A bent bobbin, a thread loop, the silhouette of a small child with raised arms, signs, signals, proof that it's spreading. And you're in it. All the way. The pamphlet you helped write has gone through 3 reprints already. George says he saw one on a gentleman's bench at the train station, just sitting there, like it belonged next to someone's top hat and cane. You nearly faint when he says it. Even Mags is serious now. Her joke songs have turned sharper. She's added a verse about the clench of Clench's jaw when the inspector's near, and somehow it becomes the new favourite among the older girls. She sings it under her breath while loading thread. You mouth the words silently as you work, trying not to smirk. The air in the factory feels tight, not hostile, not exactly, but alert. Even the machines seem to hum more carefully, like they know they're being watched. Mr. Clench walks the rows with extra stiffness. He doesn't speak much anymore. Maybe he's waiting for you to slip up. Or maybe he knows the tide's shifted and he's trying not to get washed away with it. Then one day, something very strange happens. Your supervisor, normally as expressive as boiled cabbage, approaches with a folded note. You open it, read it once, then again just to be sure. The head office wants to see you. No reason given. Just a time. Wednesday, 4 p.m. You show it to George, who recoils like it bit him. You think it's about the pamphlet? Could be, you say. Could be a setup, he adds. You think they're going to fire you? Can't, Mag says, leaning over. New rules. They can't sack kids without cause. They'll invent cause, George mutters. You all stare at the note like it might explode. Wednesday comes fast. You knock at the head office door exactly at 4. Your hands are clean-ish. You wipe them on your coat before coming in. Your gloves are tucked away, just in case someone tries to pretend this is formal. Inside, it's warmer than you expect. The walls are lined with books. There's even a rug and a kettle steaming softly in the corner like it's on break too. A man in a dark suit gestures for you to sit. You don't. He doesn't seem offended, just sighs and leans back in his chair. You're the one from the Herald article, he says. The pamphlet too. You nod. There's no point pretending otherwise. He watches you for a long moment. You're aware this puts you in a complicated position. You blink. Why? You represent a changing perception of our industry, he says, folding his hands neatly. Some see you as a voice for reform. Others see you as a liability. I'm just telling the truth. Truth is a tricky thing, he says. It can build or destroy, sometimes both. You cross your arms. You brought me here to warn me? No, he says, to ask you something. This part you weren't expecting, he continues. The public hearing went well, but there's another coming up. In London, before Parliament, a small group of workers will speak. Not just reformers, actual workers, kids included. The committee asked us to nominate one from this factory. You're still processing when he adds, "We've nominated you." Silence. Real silence, like the air stopped moving. You stare at him. Me? You've already said plenty. Might as well say it where it counts. You're stunned. You didn't even know there was another hearing. Will I still have my job, you ask? He actually smiles. Let's just say if you speak well, you'll have options. Options. That word's never been part of your vocabulary. You leave the office in a daze and walk straight into George. Well, he demands. You blink. They want me to go to London. He nearly screams. London! You're going to be famous! You laugh, kind of. I think I might throw up. That night you tell your family. Your mum just nods, quietly proud, and starts mending your shirt like it's a uniform. Your sister beams so brightly, you're pretty sure she's absorbing sunlight from another dimension. She presses a book into your hand. Their words, she says, told in yours. You sleep little that night. Your mind is already on the train, on the city, on the stone steps of Parliament and the weight of all the stories you'll carry. The day of the journey arrives. You're wearing your best shirt, your cleanest boots, your gloves, still threadbare but strong. Mags gives you a hug. George tries, and then pretends he wasn't going to. You'll do great, he says, looking at his shoes. Try not to start a war. You grin. No promises. You ride the train with the other chosen speakers. One girl worked in a mine, one boy in a glassworks. Another was nearly blinded by dye fumes in a textile mill near Leeds. You realise you're not alone, not even close. Your story is one of many, and that's the power. You arrive in London to a wave of noise and smoke. The city is bigger, louder, more terrifying than you imagined. But you hold the book your sister gave you tight in your pocket. When the time comes, you stand in front of that panel, the same kind that once ignored you, and speak. You tell them everything, not just the injuries, the hunger, the hours. You tell them about the laughter, the fire, the march. You tell them what could be if they keep going. And as the room listens, really listens, you think, I am not just surviving. I am speaking for the ones who can't. You finish speaking, and for a few heart-stopping seconds there's just silence. No coughs, no chair creaks, just the sound of your breath, shallow and uncertain, like even your lungs are waiting to see what happens next. Then someone claps, one clap, loud, crisp, then another joins in and another, and soon the whole chamber echoes with applause, not thunderous or theatrical, but real, like the sound people make when they've just realised they've been asleep for too long and someone finally opened the curtains. You blink hard, not because you're crying. No, definitely not that. Across the room, one of the committee members, a sharp-nosed woman with ink stains on her fingers, leans forward and says, "Thank you for your testimony." You nod. "Thank you for listening." And just like that, it's over. Kind of. You step out into the hallway, heart still thudding like it's running late for work. The other kids who spoke, glassworks boy, coal girl, match factory teen, they're standing nearby, stunned, smiling, shaken. You feel connected to them in a way that's hard to explain. You're from different places, different lives, but you've all stood in front of the same beast and refused to look away. A man from the Reform Society pats you on the back. "You did good," he says. "You'll see it in the papers tomorrow." George is going to explode. You board the train home with a strange feeling in your chest, some weird blend of pride and dread and exhaustion and adrenaline. You stare out the window at the endless countryside and try to imagine what happens next. Back home, you return to the factory the next day like always, but everything's changed. People know. You're not famous. Not really. But word got out. A few of the older workers nod at you with something like respect. Mr. Clench gives you the world's most awkward "good morning," which you treasure like gold, and Mags makes you a paper crown that says "loom boss" on it in smudged pencil, and insists you wear it for a full 10 minutes. You do, because why not? George, of course, demands to know everything. "Did they feed you?" he asks. "Did you see the king? Did they give you a bag of money?" "Train food. No king. Definitely no money," you say. He nods solemnly. Seems fake. Still proud of you, though. The days pass, and then the news breaks. The second factory act has passed. You see it in a newspaper pinned to the bakery window, new protections for child workers. Parliament enacts tighter labour laws. No child under 13 may work more than 6.5 hours a day. Mandatory school attendance extended. Factory inspectors expanded in number and authority. Fines increased for non-compliance. People stop in the street to read it. Old men squint at the fine print. Mothers cry quietly behind handkerchiefs. And kids? They smile, because they know. This is because of them, because of you. The factory responds fast. New schedules, actual school slots with chalkboards and slates, real inspections. Kids moved from heavy machinery to lighter tasks. No more under nines, no more 12-hour shifts for children. The changes feel sudden and glacial all at once. Your sister's school extends hours. You hear her practicing sums in her sleep now. Your mum smiles more. And one cold afternoon as you're leaving work, Mr. Clench calls after you. "You're leaving early," he says. You glance at the sky. It's still pale with winter sun. "School time." He nods. Then, "This is real," he says. "Good." You almost faint. Let's pause for our final historical check-in. The Factory Act of 1844 and the 10 Hours Act of 1847 would follow what you helped spark. Over time, the British labour system would continue to evolve, slowly removing children from the workforce and pulling education to the forefront. Progress was never clean, never easy, but it happened because people fought for it. And not just the politicians or the reformers in top hats. Children did this. Workers. The unheard, the invisible, people like you. People who refused to stay silent. People who stood up, spoke out and survived. Months pass. Spring stirs in the air. Your hands are still calloused. Your boots are still patched. But you walk differently now. You carry yourself like someone who knows their name means something. You still work, but not as much. Your shifts are shorter. You rotate in and out of the schoolroom. You help other kids, new ones, learn the machines safely. You teach them how not to get pulled under, and you listen. Because someone once listened to you. Your sister is writing now, stories, letters, tiny plays with awful dialogue and characters named things like Queen Booksworth and Captain Arithmetic. She says she's going to be a writer. You believe her, and you start collecting stories. Not for the newspapers, not for Parliament, for you, for the kids who don't know yet that they are allowed to dream. You write about the factory, the people in it, the good, the bad, the weird, the beautiful. You keep a notebook in your coat pocket. Sometimes Mag steals it and draws caricatures of George with dramatically swooped hair. But mostly it's filled with truth. Because now you know. Words can change things. And once you've used yours, once you've spoken out, you don't stop. You can't stop. You don't just survive Victorian factory life, you bend it, you outlast it. You climb out of it and plant your flag in the ashes, whispering for everyone still inside, keep going, we're almost out. You didn't get a monument, you became one, the kind no one can tear down, the kind made of story, of grit, of thread and fire. Sweet dreams, factory kid, you made history.